In the early hours of the morning, 2 days before the annual Carnival of Time, a strange ball of light appears in the night sky above Romani Ranch, a small farm in Termina. Observed by nobody but Romani herself, a child, the light darts back and forth across the sky, moving with unnatural precision and speed. Then, from this light, shapes begin to descend, haunting, cloaked figures with empty, glowing eyes, slowly moving towards the farm. Who, or what, the creatures that arrive at Romani Ranch are is never explained, and their invasion is one of the Zelda series' biggest mysteries. They're referred to in various guides and official sources as ghosts, or simply them, and their only appearance in any game is on this night at Romani Ranch. Many aspects of Majora's Mask are largely unexplained. It's one of the strangest, most surreal games in the series, but this invasion stands out as one of the most unsettling events during Link's quest through Termina. So today, let's have a closer look at the mystery of Majora's Mask's aliens. Upon first arriving at Romani Ranch on the first day, we can find Romani herself apparently playing with a bow and arrow. She'll introduce herself and give Link the name of Grasshopper because of his green clothes. She explains that she wasn't playing, she was practicing for tonight when they come. According to Romani, every year when the carnival approaches, they come riding in a bright, shining ball, and move towards the barn apparently because of the cows. Romani's older sister, Cremia, doesn't believe her, leaving her to defend the ranch alone. However, with Link here, Romani has help. She explains that the strange balloon floating near her is used for target practice, as they are vulnerable to arrows. Later that night, at around 2 AM, Romani sneaks out of her house and heads to the barn to protect the cows. Link remains outside, waiting for their arrival. At 2:30 AM, Romani's claims are proven true. A ball of light appears in the sky and a horde of creatures appear in the fields. Floating shapes with claw-like hands who begin to glide towards the barn. Using the hero's bow, Link can repel the invaders. One arrow is enough to slay each ghost, but another will directly take its place. The assault continues until dawn, when the sunlight appears to cause the beings to retreat. The glowing ball of light reappears, seemingly carrying them back to where they came from. However, if Link fails to stop the creatures, the invasion has a different outcome. If they reach the barn, then the glowing ball will move directly above it. Suddenly, a beam of light shoots down, tearing apart the barn's thatched roof, and the creatures ascend, taking with them the cows and Romani herself before flying into the distance. The next day, the cows are gone, but Romani inexplicably returns to the ranch, though she's not the same. She's found running aimlessly around the field, confused and mute, and is asleep by 6 PM that night. The next day, she simply sits on a crate outside the ranch and will allow Link to practice shooting the balloons, but can't remember what this practice is for. Whatever happened to her after she was abducted by the creatures has damaged her mind. She can't remember the invasion and holds her head in apparent pain. Romani Ranch is run entirely by the two sisters, ever since it was left to them by their late father. It's never explained how he passed away, but Cremia explains that it's been a while since it happened. Their mother is never mentioned, aside from the name of their house, Mama's house. It's possible that this Mama died at the same time as their father, but if that's the case, it's strange that she's not mentioned by Cremia. Instead, I think it's more likely that the girl's mother died, or left, a long time before their father, hence why she's never mentioned. At the risk of getting into speculation, it's entirely possible that the girl's father, and perhaps even their mother too, was killed or abducted by these ghosts. Romani makes it clear that they've appeared at least one time before, as she knows about the ghosts and how they attack. She sets up the practice balloons around the ranch because she knows that they're weak to arrows, and even draws up defensive plans in her bedroom, detailing how she aims to defeat them. So perhaps the girl's father, who we know ran the ranch before his passing, died protecting it against these invaders. While many aspects regarding the ghosts aren't clear, One thing is their target. They all make a beeline directly for the barn, and as soon as they reach it, they proceed to abduct the cows and leave. While Romani is returned at some point after she's taken, the cows are never seen again, giving us reason to believe that stealing them was the sole purpose of the invasion. The cows at Romani Ranch aren't ordinary. They're Romani bred, able to produce the special Chateau Romani. This milk is not only implied to be alcoholic, but also magical. It provides Link with unlimited magic power until he resets the cycle. Regardless of who these invaders are, if they're at all magical in nature, then stealing the cows whose milk has these magical properties is reason enough for the attack on the ranch. A popular theory for the culprits behind the attack on the ranch blames the Gorman brothers, rival farmers who envy the quality of Romani Ranch's prized milk. The brothers are constantly trying to sabotage the sisters' farm, breaking bottles of milk, terrorizing cows, and even blocking Milk Road with a boulder to prevent Cremia's deliveries to Clocktown. On the second day, if Link has defended Romani Ranch from the ghosts, he can help Cremia deliver milk to Clocktown. During this journey, the Gorman brothers wear Garrow masks and chase the cart on horseback, trying to destroy the shipment. Out of everyone, it makes the most sense for the Gorman brothers to be responsible for the invasion on the first day. The ghosts specifically target the cows, the prized cattle who make Chateau Romani. Without them, the ranch is worthless. The fact that the brothers own Garrow masks shows that they're connected, at least slightly, with darker, more sinister powers than we'd expect from a group of criminals. The Garrow were once the rivals of the Akana Kingdom, who now, even in death, continue to spy on the region. Notably, the brothers' reaction if Link fails to defend Romani Ranch hints that they might know something about the invasion. However, this doesn't seem like something the brothers could organize. They're definitely criminals who without second thought terrorize and sabotage their neighbors, but I just can't see them being able to somehow summon these sinister creatures every year, who appear from a ball of light near the Carnival of Time. If the brothers somehow had the ability to call down an army of cow-abducting ghosts, why would they bother with plots like blocking the roads or smashing bottles or chasing down the cart? They're selfish and nefarious, sure, but I think what happens on the first night is far more sinister and far more strange. The creatures are based on the Flatwoods Monster, a famous American alien sighting. On the 12th of September 1952, around 7:15 PM, something bright streaked across the sky above the town of Flatwoods, West Virginia. Two brothers, Ed and Freddie May, along with their mum and a few other boys, traveled to a nearby farm, where they believed that the object had landed. After traveling to a hill on the farm, the group discovered, to their horror, that they were no longer alone. They came face to face with a creature around 10 feet tall, with claw-like hands and a head shaped like a spade. The creature's eyes glowed with a sickly greenish-orange light, and according to some sources, it hissed at the group and began to glide towards them, causing them to flee in terror. It's since been concluded that the Flatwoods Monster may well have been a barn owl disturbed by the group, and the bright object in the sky was most likely a meteor. But regardless, the description of the monster, a tall, gliding figure with a strange hooded head, glowing eyes and claw-like hands, perfectly matches the appearance and movements of Romani Ranch's ghosts. Even the glowing ball from which the ghosts appear fits with the story of this cryptid, matching the supposed meteor spotted on the night of the 12th of September. Although not directly linked to the Flatwoods Monster, the Romani ghosts' abduction of livestock is a trope commonly linked to aliens, like this newspaper excerpt from the 70s. Regardless of whether or not they aim to steal the cows for their magical Chateau Romani, the act of abducting the cows at all is directly because they're based on aliens. They even lift the livestock from the barn via what appears to be a tractor beam. In fact, this connection is outright confirmed in a 2015 interview with A.G. Aonuma. An interviewer from GameSpot asks the Zelda director, "One thing that felt very different from other Zelda games was the section where you're rescuing Romani Ranch and its cows from aliens. When I played this game as a kid, I thought that they were sent by the Gorman brothers, but replaying it now, they were definitely just a weird, alien-like presence. What was the inspiration behind their inclusion?" To which Aonuma replies, "Really? I'd never heard anything like your Gorman brothers theory before. I'll have to remember that. But the reason we used this at the time was because Japan was experiencing something of a UFO boom. And it even went so far as for shows on TV to cover it and explain to people what cattle mutilation was. So even to see words as scary as cattle mutilation on TV, and the idea of UFOs abducting people led to this whole idea of Earth being invaded by aliens becoming rather popular. I thought that it would be really interesting and scary to use this in a game. That's how we decided to go with that. So Romani Ranch's visitors in the night are actually visitors. Travelers from another world, inspired by UFO mania in Japan during Majora's Mask's development, and modelled after a famous American alien sighting. They weren't summoned by the Gorman brothers, at least not in the eyes of Aonuma. They're something else, something completely disconnected from Termina and its people. This is supported by a photograph found at the Stockpot Inn in the 3DS remake, a flying saucer above the trees, and a sketch found in Cremia and Romani's room, the same saucer flying above the ranch. It's not clear when these were taken and drawn, but considering that neither of them appear to be at night, which is when the aliens appear every year, it's possible that the beings have visited Termina more frequently than we thought. So, to answer the question of who these creatures are, what they want, and where they're from, the only actual answer we have is, we don't know. And we're not meant to. They're not part of the rivalry between two competing farms. They're not even connected to Majora and its dark powers. They're beings from beyond this world, who we've never seen before and likely will never see again. We'll never know what they did to Romani after she was abducted, just like we'll never truly know what happened to real people who claim to have been abducted by visitors. During Majora's Mask's end credits, we see Romani and Cremia at the ranch. Romani looses 3 arrows in quick succession, taking out 3 practice balloons, and Cremia applauds. Even though Link successfully defended the ranch from the invaders, Romani expects them to return next year, as they always have. But this time, she'll be ready. It seems that Cremia might finally believe her, and her skill with the bow is improving fast. Even though on the first night, without Link's support, the aliens succeed, Romani now seems to have the confidence to face them without his help. Termina is a weird place. A bizarre, parallel world full of familiar faces worn by strange characters. As Aonuma puts it, it's something familiar that has been warped in a very unusual and interesting way. And it just so happens that, in this weird land, aliens exist. Not ghosts or disguised spies, visitors from another world. Their purpose entirely unknown. We don't know if similar beings exist somewhere beyond Hyrule too. It's possible, but perhaps the existence of these beings is just one more strange thing about Termina. Despite his relatively few appearances, the Happy Mask Salesman has become one of the most iconic characters in the Zelda series. Because, although he claims to be a mere happiness salesman peddling masks, there are hints towards a darker truth behind his character. The Mask Salesman possesses incredibly dangerous, powerful ancient artifacts, and while his usual demeanour is overly friendly and humble, his personality shifts violently to deranged and psychotic when things don't go his way. Which begs the question, is the character of the Happy Mask Salesman in itself a mask, hiding a sinister truth underneath? Chronologically, the Mask Salesman's first appearance in the series is in Ocarina of Time. He owns the Happy Mask Shop in Castletown, a strange building found in the Temple of Time. We can assume that the shop is a relatively new addition to the town square. A man can be found inside who remarks on how strange it is, and wonders when it'll be open for business. The store opens up only after Link has spoken to the guard blocking off Death Mountain Trail and offered up Zelda's letter. The guard mentions that his son wants a popular mask sold from the newly opened shop and asks Link to buy one for him. The next time the hero visits Castletown, the Happy Mask Shop is no longer empty. A gaunt man with a frozen smile stands behind the counter, claiming that he deals in masks that bring happiness to everyone. He explains that the shop lends out masks to customers who can then sell them on for profit, beginning with the Keaton mask, the one the Death Mountain Trail guard asked about. Over the course of the game, Link can rent out and sell the Keaton mask, Skull mask, Spooky mask, and the Bunny hoods to characters around Hyrule, eventually earning himself the right to borrow the Goron, Zora, and Gerudo masks from behind the counter, along with the Mask of Truth, a mysterious, ancient relic passed down by the Sheikah tribe that allows its wearer to see into the minds of others. The mask salesman describes Link working for him as becoming a happiness salesman, and this rings true. Each of the 4 masks sold as part of his quest solve a problem for their respective characters, like a Skull Kid buying the Skull mask to make himself seem tougher, or the Graveyard Kid buying the Spooky mask to make him feel more like his idol Dampé. For the most part, the Happy Mask salesman maintains his beaming smile and pleasant demeanour, but we get a glimpse at a darker side. If Link returns without masks or rupees, his face sours into a terrifying glare as he demands that Link pay back the money. Eerily, the salesman never stops smiling, even when enraged. On the surface, there isn't much to the Happy Mask salesman in Ocarina of Time, though the game does hint at deeper mysteries surrounding him. After Link pulls the Master Sword and travels 7 years forward in time, Ganondorf's destruction of Castletown means that the Happy Mask Shop is abandoned and inaccessible. The salesman is nowhere to be seen, but he wasn't killed. During the game's end credits, we see the Happy Mask salesman celebrating at Lon Lon Ranch alongside many of the game's other characters, meaning that he was most likely in hiding or had fled Hyrule during Ganondorf's reign. From here, though, he doesn't appear for the rest of this timeline. In the adult timeline, the version of history that follows on from Ganondorf breaking into the Sacred Realm and obtaining the Triforce of Power and his subsequent defeat by Link, the story of the Happy Mask salesman is entirely unknown. But this isn't the case for the 2 other timelines leading on from this game. In the Downfall timeline, an alternate version of events where the hero of time is defeated by Ganondorf, the Happy Mask salesman somewhat inexplicably shows up in Labyrinth in Oracle of Ages. Here, he again runs a mask shop, though has a much smaller role in the game. He's involved in the game's item trading sequence. When first encountered, he'll claim that he's starving, and so will trade Link the doggy mask in return for some tasty meat. Labyrinth is a distant land from Hyrule, and Oracle of Ages takes place long after Ocarina of Time, so it's debatable whether this is the same salesman or a reincarnation akin to the many different appearances of characters like Beedle or Malon. On this note, we do see what might be his ancestor in Skyward Sword. Rupin is the owner of the gear shop on Skyloft, where Link can buy various equipment. As well as obviously being a shopkeeper, Rupin closely resembles the mask salesman's appearance, with an incredibly similar face and haircut, and he rubs his hands together in much the same way. Rupin also mirrors the Happy Mask salesman's darker side. If you put down an item without buying it, the smile drops and he'll glare at Link. And if he's talked to at night, he'll make no effort to be friendly like during the day, saying that he gets tired of being a smiley shopkeeper. Considering that Skyward Sword is the very beginning of the Zelda storyline, and explores the ancestors, both genetic and spiritual, of many of the series' iconic characters, it could be that the Happy Mask salesman is in some way descended from Rupin. But regardless, up until now, The mask salesman seems to be little more than an eccentric shopkeeper intent on bringing people happiness, but this all changes with his child timeline appearance. This timeline is the result of Princess Zelda sending Link back through time after Ganon's defeat. He warns a young Zelda about Ganondorf's betrayal, and by doing so, stops the Gerudo King from taking the Triforce of Power and preventing much of Ocarina of Time from occurring, which sends Link off on a journey to find Navi after her mysterious disappearance. The events in Hyrule during this time are largely unknown, but we do learn that the Happy Mask salesman left his shop to travel in search of valuable masks. Just like the Mask of Truth, a priceless, ancient Sheikah relic, the salesman was fascinated by the rarest and most legendary masks, and it was this fixation that led him to the discovery of his most powerful, dangerous artifact yet, Majora's Mask itself. At some point during his travels, the mask salesman went to great lengths to procure an accursed mask once used by an ancient tribe in hexing rituals. A mask containing an evil, wicked power which it bestows upon its wearer. Legend has it that this mask was so dangerous that the tribe sealed it in shadow, fearing that it would be misused and its great power unleashed. But by the time that the mask salesman discovered it, the ancient tribe had long vanished and been forgotten, and along with them the truth about the mask's power. Though it can still be sensed, the doom of a dark omen brewing shrouds the artifact. We don't know exactly where or how the salesman came into possession of Majora's Mask, but before long it changed hands again. The Happy Mask salesman was ambushed in the woods by a Skull Kid, a kind of forest spirit known for mischief. The Skull Kid stole Majora's Mask, and as soon as he put it on, its dark powers began to take hold. Now poisoned by the malevolent influence of Majora, the Skull Kid's pranks became increasingly dangerous and twisted. Sometime later, he encounters the hero of time journeying through the Lost Woods on his search for Navi, and steals Epona and the Ocarina of Time. Link pursues his assailant, but the Skull Kid vanishes down a tree trunk into the mysterious land of Termina. Now, what exactly Termina is, and how it relates to the Skull Kid and Majora's magic is a topic for a different video, but it seems to be some sort of alternate dimension or other dreamlike world, populated with doppelgangers of the people of Hyrule. Termina has its own religions and history to Hyrule, and interestingly, the Skull Kid himself is a central figure in this land's culture and stories, apparently having befriended the godlike giants long ago. Regardless of the truth about Termina though, the Skull Kid and Majora's Mask transform Link into a Deku Scrub, thereby trapping him not only in an unfamiliar world, but an unfamiliar body. Together, the forest spirit and the ancient mask wreak havoc on Termina and its people, threatening to bring the moon crashing down in 3 days. It's here, when all hope seems lost, that Link once again encounters the Happy Mask salesman in the bowels of the Great Clock Tower. He explains that he's been following Link ever since he was robbed of Majora's Mask, and begs the hero to recover his lost treasure. In return, he claims that he's able to return Link to his true form, though he'll only be in town for 3 days. Link lives out these 3 days in Termina, until the final hours before the Carnival of Time begins. The moon now hangs only a few feet above the town, its face twisted into a sinister grimace. Majora is within seconds of achieving its goal and desolating Termina, until, miraculously, Link is able to knock the Ocarina of Time out of the Skull Kid's hands and use it to rewind time 3 days, back to the dawn of his first day in Termina. In the Clock Tower, Link once again meets with the Mask Salesman, who seems overjoyed that the hero has recovered the Ocarina of Time from the Skull Kid. He teaches Link the Song of Healing, a melody that apparently heals evil magic and troubled spirits, transforming them into masks. By playing it, Link is finally able to shed himself of his Deku form, catching the Deku's spirit and containing it within a mask. However, when Link explains that he hasn't yet recovered Majora's Mask, the salesman erupts, violently shaking the hero and crying that terrible things will happen if the mask isn't returned to him. Link now begins his journey through Termina, rescuing the 4 giants and healing the land's people by using the Song of Time to relive the same 3 days again and again. The mask salesman remains in the clock tower, waiting for Link to return with Majora's Mask, but will offer insight into any other mask that the hero shows him. It's not until the very end of the game, after Link defeats Majora itself within the moon, that the mask salesman returns to the story. The 4 giants leave, the Skull Kid is returned to his normal self, and finally, the happy mask salesman once again holds Majora's Mask, noting that the evil power within has finally gone. He bids Link farewell, saying that he must continue on his travels, commenting that whenever there is a meeting, there will be a parting to follow, but for how long this parting lasts is up to you. He mentions that Link has made a lot of people happy, and with that, the salesman vanishes. Despite how important the Happy Mask salesman appears to be for Majora's Mask and its story, he doesn't interact with Link for the vast majority of the game. Instead, he only plays a significant role at the very beginning and very end. But clearly, he's incredibly important to Link's quest and to Termina as a whole. The salesman is directly responsible for, and fully understands, Termina's struggle. He found and took Majora's Mask, aware of its history and its dangerous power, and so Majora being unleashed on Termina thanks to a meddling Skull Kid was a direct result of his actions. But despite this apparently horrific mistake, he remains mysterious and sly, reacting to Link's terrible fate with a knowing chuckle. He claims to have followed the hero into Termina, and is apparently aware of the fate that awaits it, claiming that he's busy and so conveniently must leave in 3 days. But how? Link can't leave, even once he's regained his Hylian form in the Ocarina of Time. In Ocarina of Time and Oracle of Ages, the Happy Mask salesman doesn't seem to be anything more than what he claims to be, a peddler of masks that make people happy. But in Majora's Mask, he seems to exist outside of the game's world and story, somehow knowing everything about Termina and the fate that his actions have doomed it to. In this sense, it's hard not to see him as something of a villain. Though he's caused the problem, he doesn't interact with it, and doesn't intend to be around when the consequences literally hit home. While Link is now trapped alongside the people of Termina in a world doomed to annihilation, the salesman admits that he can and will leave soon. But this isn't the full picture. Though he did cause the problem, he gives Link the solution, the Song of Healing. It's through this song that Link gains the ability to fight back against this seemingly unavoidable fate, first by reclaiming his original body, and later by using the song to heal Termina's wounds. He even seems to acknowledge that saving Termina will only be possible with the use of time travel, claiming that there's no time left, but time is not eternal, and telling Link to believe in his strengths. And, as his final lines at the end of the game seem to suggest, the mask salesman does in fact want Link to succeed on his quest, and does appreciate the happiness that the hero has brought to the people of Termina. If Link shows almost any of the game's masks to the salesman in the clock tower, he'll comment on them. Often this is just providing simple descriptions or backstories, but he'll also frequently comment that he can sense emotions within the masks, related to the people Link has helped and healed along his journey. The Blast mask is earned by saving the old lady from the bomb shop, and is filled with feelings of gratitude, and the Gibdo mask contains the love of a father and child. This brings us back once again to the salesman's last few lines. He mentions that Link's masks are filled with happiness, a good happiness, and that he's managed to make quite a number of people happy. While on the surface Majora's Mask seems to be about preventing the apocalypse and bringing a dangerous mask back to its owner, true satisfaction from the game comes from living the same 3 days alongside Termina's people, learning about their lives and their problems and using your time to heal them. While it seems like all of Link's work is undone with each cycle, he keeps with him his masks, physical manifestations of the good he has done. Solid, hard proof that his struggles were not in vain. If Majora's Mask were a game of Dungeons and Dragons, the Happy Mask Salesman would be the Dungeon Master. He is the cause of all the hardships Link faces, but isn't directly involved in the game's events. He guides and influences Link from behind the scenes, and while he is equal parts mysterious and unsettling, it does seem that the mask salesman is on Link's side. So it's difficult to define exactly who or what the salesman is. Majora's Mask takes elements from Ocarina of Time and twists them into something completely new and strange, yet still built on many of the same themes like courage and self-sacrifice. And the difference in the Happy Mask Salesman between these two games mirrors this. He's much more eerie and magical and enigmatic in Majora's Mask, but it does seem that he still fulfills the same role, using masks to bring happiness. Whether his apparent omniscience and impossible powers are truly his, or if they're only granted to him by virtue of being in the strange world of Termina, remains a mystery. Tell me, do you ever feel a strange sadness as dusk falls? The Zelda series occasionally ventures into darker territory than its family-friendly presentation might suggest. Ocarina of Time's Shadow Temple, the Wind Waker's Earth Temple, and, well, everything in Majora's Mask. However, Twilight Princess features one location that I find more unsettling than any other: Twilight itself. Twilight Princess's story begins in Ordon Village, when Ilia and Colin are captured by invading Bulblins. Link is knocked unconscious, and when he comes to, he gives chase, sprinting across the wooden bridge towards Faron Woods. But he finds that the forest has changed. A wall of nothingness looms at its edge, a black void where Link's world seems to just end. This is the Twilight, a part of the world from which the light has been extinguished. Hyrule has been attacked by an invisible enemy from another world, in what would become known as the Twilight Invasion. Before its people realized what was happening, huge swathes of the kingdom became trapped in perpetual dusklight, suspended somewhere between life and death. Under this veil of darkness, time itself seems to have stopped. Strange black particles pepper the air, which is stained with a sickly amber glow. Hyrule's citizens are now lost in this netherworld, though they do not understand what has happened to them. In this world of shadows, they have been stripped of their bodies and reduced to spirits, but they live on, unaware of the fate that has befallen them. In his wolf form, Link can use his enhanced senses to see the true forms of these lost spirits, revealing that they are terrified. In the sewers of Hyrule Castle, the spirits of soldiers tremble with fear, pleading that someone save them from that which hunts them, because the spirits of mortals aren't the only things living in the twilight. The shadow beasts lurk in the darkness, impossible, alien creatures which appear as if from nowhere, whose unnatural strength can overpower even the finest soldiers in Hyrule's military. These dark beings are responsible for Hyrule's fate, and are the main threat to the spirits trapped in the twilight. But to understand the Shadow Beasts, we first need to understand what Twilight itself actually is, and what has happened to Hyrule. The story of the Twilight begins long before the events of Twilight Princess, when a clan of powerful magic wielders conspired to take the omnipotent Triforce for themselves. These people, remembered only as the Interlopers, were so great a threat that the gods themselves intervened, commanding the 4 light spirits to banish them, sealing them forever in a land devoid of light, the Twilight Realm. Though they were gone from Hyrule, these people lived on in the darkness. Over countless generations, they adapted to their new environment. They developed a civilization and a culture, and were known as the Twilight. Despite their violent ancestors, the Twilight were mostly a peaceful people, the anger and hatred at their perceived oppression all but forgotten. Until, in Hyrule, Ganondorf was to be executed. Captured by the sages, the King of Thieves was impaled by a sacred sword, but he did not die. Granted divine strength by the Triforce of Power, Ganondorf broke free of his restraints and killed a sage, intent on releasing his fury upon the kingdom that had wronged him. Left with no other choice, the remaining sages were forced to open the only door to the Twilight Realm and seal Ganondorf inside, along with the Twilight, whose ancestors had originally been imprisoned there. This proved to be a fatal mistake. A being like Ganondorf could not be contained. Immediately, he began working to free himself. He discovered Zant, an aspirant to the Twilight Throne who had been shunned by his own people for his ambitions of vengeance and his lust for power. Another aspirant named Midna was instead to be the ruler of the Twilight, a powerful sorceress in her own right, but one with a fair temperament that befit a princess. Ganondorf saw this as an opportunity and knew that he could use it to his advantage. In return for his servitude, Ganondorf bestowed his own power upon Zant, allowing him to overthrow Midna and take control of the Twilight. Drunk on his newfound power, the usurper king set his sights on what he and his master both desired: revenge against Hyrule, against those who lived in the light. Zant used his magic to change the denizens of the Twilight Realm. He cursed Midna, contorting her into an impish form, and transformed his own people into violent beasts under his control, foot soldiers for his war. With these monsters at his heel, Zant began the Twilight invasion. Shadow beasts materialized in the springs of three of the light spirits, Faron, Eldin, and Lanayru, and stole the light from them, causing the regions they protected to fall into twilight. Zant himself traveled to Hyrule Castle and offered Princess Zelda a choice: surrender or die. This is the fate that has befallen Hyrule at the start of Twilight Princess. When he wakes up after being attacked by the Bulblins, the kingdom has already fallen into darkness. When he approaches the boundary of the Twilight on the edge of Faron Woods, he's attacked once again. A shadow beast's black arm reaches out and pulls him inside. Had Link been a mere mortal, he would have then met the same fate as all others who find themselves in the Twilight. He would have succumbed to the darkness and been reduced to a spirit. But Link is different. He possesses the Triforce of Courage, and its magic saves him. Instead, Link transforms into a blue-eyed wolf. This coincides with an ancient prophecy passed down by the Twilight that a hero would appear in the form of a divine beast, and so Midna, who was lurking nearby, chooses to follow Link, and the pair decide to venture through the Twilight regions together. Throughout the game, Link and Midna explore the shrouded provinces of Faron, Eldin, and Lanayru. The wounded husks of the light spirits each give Link a vessel of light, with which he can collect tears of light, the light stolen from the spirits when the shadow beasts attacked. However, the tears are now found within shadow insects, giant, scuttling, beetle-like creatures that cling to walls or burrow beneath the ground and are invisible to the naked eye, so can be seen only by using Link's wolf senses. Link needs to explore the sections of the world shrouded in darkness, hunt the insects, and restore the light. In my mind, the Twilight is one of the most unsettling locations in any Zelda game. It's not as overtly scary as, say, the Shadow Temple, an underground torture chamber, but the horror here is something deeper, something more unnerving. In the twilight, there's an unshakable feeling that something's not quite right, like Link is an intruder in a place he should not be in. There's a liminal quality to Hyrule under Twilight, a strange, uneasy sadness that you can't escape from. The visual and audio design of Twilight reinforces this sense of wrongness. The square black particles lingering in the air and the blocky design of the portals give this realm a strangely digital feel, and the music and sound effects reflect this. Everything about it feels out of place, like the game itself is glitching, like these are invaders from outside of reality, beings beyond understanding. This feeling is further accentuated by the fact that the spirits found within the Twilight can't see Link. The player gets an intimate view into these characters' feelings, and can experience their terror firsthand, but can't interact with them, can't reassure them. It feels like a dream in which nobody can see you, a strange mirror world where Link is present but powerless, able to witness everything but unable to change it. The spirits of these people cower in their houses. Koro stands on a pile of boxes, terrified of the giant insects that have invaded his home. Reynardo, Barnes, and the Ordon children take refuge in Kakariko Village, hiding from the monsters outside. It's in this scene that we learn a horrifying detail about the Twilight. Barnes, in his panic, remembers how the lady from the general store was attacked by a single shadow beast, and a whole group from the town went to rescue her. When the townsfolk arrived, however, they didn't find the woman, but instead 2 shadow beasts waiting for them. This implies that the shadow beasts are not only transformed Twilight, but humans too. When they attack, they will turn your friends and family against you, twisting them into more of the warped black monsters. Twilight Princess begins with a conversation between Link and Russell. As the woods around them are steeped in the glowing embers of twilight, Russell asks Link if he ever feels a strange sadness as dusk falls. They say it's the only time when our world intersects with theirs, the only time we can feel the lingering regrets of spirits who have left our world. That is why loneliness always pervades the hour of twilight. Hyruleans believe that there is a spirit world, an afterlife that is closest to their own as the sun sets. This calls into question the nature of Twilight, whether it is the truth behind this myth, a kind of Yomi or world of the dead. Midna questions this assertion, however. In the Japanese version of the game, she claims that Hyruleans act like it's the other world or something. However, that is not so. In truth, it is a beautiful place, calm like the hour of twilight in this world. Near the end of the game, Link and Midna visit the Twilight Realm itself. This is different to the areas of Hyrule in which the Twilight has bled. This is the dimension to which the Interlopers and Ganondorf were banished, the home of the Twilight. If Hyrule is a land bathed in light, then this place is what exists in its shadow. Not a dark world like Ganon's twisted evil realm, but a somber place devoid of light. It's in the Palace of Twilight found in this world that the difference between Hyrule shrouded in twilight and the Twilight Realm itself becomes clear. Unlike when he enters Twilight in Hyrule, Link isn't forced into his wolf form when he enters the Twilight Realm itself, so we can assume that mortals wouldn't be reduced to spirits here either. That is, unless Link comes into contact with dark fog found inside the palace. If this touches him, he'll transform into Wolf Link, and can't return to his Hylian form until it's no longer in contact with him. Midna explains that this fog is made up of shadow crystals created by Zant, which blot out light, exactly the same as the shadow crystal he created earlier on in the story, which he used to lock Link into his wolf form permanently. This is a dark magic that only the Master Sword itself could break. and Midna explains that this is what stole the light from the light spirits and cast Hyrule into twilight. Zant, however, holds very little power of his own. Everything he has, everything he is, was granted to him by his master, Ganondorf. The dark fog, the shadow crystals, and, by extension, the veil of twilight itself is Ganondorf's own dark magic. So when Hyrule is cloaked in twilight, it isn't just this shadowy dimension bleeding into the light world. It's Ganondorf's dark powers made manifest, poisoning the kingdom who shunned him. The eerie, silent towns and forests Link explores aren't the somber, peaceful twilight, they're a violent, nightmarish echo of it, twisted by the evil magic of the Dark Lord. In a way, Russell's myth is proven correct. This is the Otherworld, a purgatory filled with sadness and regret. Ganon's Dark World, a land of spirits and death. Though they do not know it, Hyrule citizens have been sent to hell itself, terrified and alone. All the while, Princess Zelda remains trapped in her tower. Like Link in the Twilight, she can sense her people's suffering, but is unable to help, painfully aware that all the people know now is fear. Fear of a nameless evil. In Twilight Princess, Link is taught sword techniques by the Hero's Shade, an armoured, skeletal warrior. The Hero's Shade is one of the Zelda series' most enigmatic characters, an undead swordsman with a single, piercing red eye, clad in a suit of ancient golden armour. The game reveals very little about his backstory, but it does hint at his true identity. It seems that he is none other than the Hero of Time, the incarnation of Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. How is this possible? How did this legendary hero, the Link who travelled the roads of time itself to save his kingdom, become this? Subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content, and let's examine the story of the Hero's Shade. After Link has made his way through the dusky Faron Woods, but before he enters its heart, the Forest Temple, he meets a shimmering, golden wolf. When approached, the wolf lunges at the hero. Gilded jaws snap shut on Link's head, and the forest around them fades into mist. When the hero wakes, he finds himself in an eerie, dreamlike echo of Hyrule, and the golden wolf reveals its true form, a towering phantom knight. The skeletal swordsman tells Link that a sword wields no strength unless the hand that holds it has courage. You may be destined to become the hero of legend, but your current power would disgrace the proud green of the hero's tunic you wear. You must use your courage to seek power, and find it you must. Only then will you become the hero for whom this world despairs. The Hero's Shade can be encountered multiple times throughout Twilight Princess, each time teaching Link a hidden skill, improving the nascent hero's ability with the blade. His identity is never explicitly stated in the game, but it is in Hyrule Historia, which claims that the spirit of Link's ancestor, the Hero of Time, teaches him his secrets. Ever since returning to the Child era, the swordsman has lamented the fact that he was not remembered as a hero. This quote affirmed the already commonly accepted belief surrounding the Hero's Shade, but it claims three things. First, that the Hero's Shade is the spirit of the Hero of Time. Second, that the Hero of Twilight is directly descended from the Hero of Time. And third, that the reason the Hero of Time's spirit lingers on is because he regrets his legacy. But just how much does the game itself support these claims? What evidence is there for the Hero's Shade's identity and motivations? There are numerous obvious parallels between Link and the Hero's Shade. Both are skilled, left-handed swordsmen, and both also take on the form of a wolf. Notably, Link's wolf form is the result of his possession of the Triforce of Courage. The artifact is able to shield him from the effects of the Twilight and allow him to take on a bestial form rather than be reduced to a spirit. Midna claims that her people, the Twilight, long knew that a hero would appear in the form of a divine beast. The hero's Shade's wolf form is different, however. His wolf is gold, and doesn't seem to be a response to the effects of Twilight like Link's, instead something like a reflection of his true spirit. As another incarnation of the hero, he too can take on the form of a divine beast. This is supported by his dialogue too, where he refers to his techniques as only for the one who carries the blood of the hero, the one whose spirit is that of the sublime beast. With Link in mind, certain elements of his armor do stand out. The red pattern on his loincloth is vaguely reminiscent of the red Loftwing design on the Hylian shield, and the face on the Shade's chestplate could further echo this, especially with what appears to be a beak. However, the chestplate also seems to feature ears, so perhaps this, coupled with the golden colour of his armour, calls back to his alternate form as the Golden Wolf. Interestingly, the hero's Shade is missing an eye, only his red left eye peers out from beneath his helmet. This isn't just because he's a broken old skeleton either. This missing eye is apparent in his wolf form too. This could be an old battle wound from an unseen adventure, but in particular could reference Date Masamune, a legendary samurai known as the One-Eyed Dragon. Concept artwork for the hero's Shade shows that the developers originally considered a design much more closely based on a samurai, fitting for an ancient, legendary warrior. Hyrule Encyclopedia lists the hero's Shade as a Stalfos, one of a class of undead warriors, often appearing as enemies in Zelda games. According to Fado, a Kokiri, anyone who enters Hyrule's forest becomes lost, and everyone who is lost becomes a Stalfos. However, except for a passing similarity between the hero's Shade and a Stalfos, there isn't a whole lot to this theory. For one, the Shade, while appearing skeletal, isn't actually a skeleton. While we can see his skull, he does appear to have ghostly flesh, unlike any Stalfos. Additionally, Stalfos, while undead, are physical beings. They exist in the mortal world, the same plane of reality as Hylians and Zora and Gorons do. But the hero's Shade only appears in this form in this spiritual plane. In the real world, he exclusively takes the form of a golden wolf, leading me to believe that the hero's Shade is, well, a shade, a phantom, not a Stalfos. This spiritual plane is interesting in itself. Surrounding the area where these two heroes train are landmarks from around Hyrule, like the Arbiter's Grounds, Death Mountain, and Hyrule Castle itself. The fact that the Golden Wolf leaps at Link's head could imply that this training takes place within Link's mind, not unlike the Silent Realm trials from Skyward Sword, which also took place within ghostly echoes of the real world. But for all the mystery surrounding the hero's Shade, one small detail does provide irrefutable evidence for his true identity, seen while he teaches Link the Mortal Draw skill, when he wears his sword on his hip. While the blade itself isn't anything special, the scabbard is. It's identical to the Master Sword's scabbard, only worn and decayed like the rest of his armor. The Master Sword's scabbard is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek Zelda mystery, resulting from a quirk of game design. Whenever Link pulls the Master Sword, he just seems to magically gain the scabbard too. Obviously, we're just not meant to think about this, like how the hero of Time suddenly gains leggings and earrings after aging 7 years. But the fact that the hero's Shade is still in possession of a broken, ancient version of the scabbard suggests that he wielded the Master Sword at some point in time, confirming the theory that this is the spirit of a previous incarnation of Link. But how do we know that this swordsman who wields the Master Sword's scabbard is the hero of Time specifically? Notably, the words Hero of Time are never mentioned in Twilight Princess. However, a previous incarnation of Link is repeatedly referenced, either as the Ancient Hero, the Legendary Hero, or the Hero of Legend. Throughout the game, Link obtains various equipment once owned by this mythical hero. First, his tunic, which is given to him by the light spirit Farron after Link clears the Twilight from the area. Farron claims that the tunic was worn by an ancient hero chosen by the gods, and that his power slept within Link. And in the Goron mines, Link finds the hero's bow, said to be a treasure that once belonged to the legendary hero, which the Gorons have guarded for generations. Multiple other characters reference this hero too. It seems reasonable to believe that this ancient hero is the very same as the hero's shade. Otherwise, we're dealing with two separate legendary heroes from long ago, and the hero of Twilight is following in both of their footsteps. So, can we identify this ancient hero? Twilight Princess is set hundreds of years after Ocarina of Time's Child timeline ending, the alternate branch of history created when the Hero of Time returned to the past and warned Zelda of Ganondorf's betrayal, preventing his 7-year rule over the Kingdom of Hyrule. There are 4 playable Links that predate the Hero of Twilight. Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Link from Four Swords, Link from the Minish Cap, and Link from Skyward Sword. There is, of course, the Hero of Men mentioned in the Minish Cap's intro, and another unseen Link mentioned in the backstory of Four Swords, bringing our total to 6 possible candidates that we know of for the identity of the ancient hero mentioned in Twilight Princess. And there's always the possibility that the hero's shade is another Link entirely, one never seen nor mentioned in any game prior to Twilight Princess. More than any other Link, the green tunic and hero's bow said to belong to this ancient hero closely resemble those used by Skyward Sword Link. And by this time, the hero of the skies would truly be an ancient hero, one whose deeds would be carved into legend. A hero who saved the Kingdom of Hyrule before it even had a name. However, this is ignoring a crucial detail I've already mentioned. The hero's shade is left-handed, like the hero of Twilight and the hero of Time, and unlike the hero of the skies, who wields his sword in his right hand. This invalidates the idea that the shade is the Link from Skyward Sword entirely. The answer to the hero's shade's identity might not come from the shade himself, but his golden wolf form. Whenever Link encounters a Howling Stone, he howls songs together with this spectral wolf. And most, albeit not all of these, are songs connected to the Hero of Time's quests, such as the Prelude of Light, and the Requiem of Spirit, from Ocarina of Time, and the Song of Healing from Majora's Mask. In particular, this final song is a secret melody taught to the Hero of Time by the happy mask salesman in Termina. It's incredibly personal to Link's journey in Majora's Mask. If the Golden Wolf is howling songs that reflect his own life as a hero, then it seems more likely that he is, indeed, the Hero of Time. From a narrative standpoint, this makes the most sense. Twilight Princess acts as a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time. Together with The Wind Waker, Twilight Princess shows one of 2 different futures for the Kingdom of Hyrule following the Hero of Time's adventure. It makes the most sense for this hero to be the one referenced here, but the game never makes this explicit, and this claim could be argued against. But regardless, that's the first claim made by Hyrule Historia covered, and I'd argue that the lorebook is mostly accurate here. The hero's shade is definitely the spirit of a previous Link, and while it isn't certain, it seems probable that this Link was the Hero of Time. As for the second claim made by Hyrule Historia, that the hero's shade is Twilight Princess Link's ancestor, that's an easy one to prove. The two are explicitly stated to share a bloodline. Not only does the shade refer to him as my child, he claims that the skills I have to teach you entered the realm of true secrecy. They are forgotten ways that do not leave our bloodline. This puts the hero of Twilight in a somewhat unique position as the only Link canonically descended from another, and could further explain why Faron refers to the ancient hero's power as sleeping within Link, as well as why he is seemingly born in possession of the Triforce of Courage, rather than needing to earn it. And finally, the third claim, that ever since returning to the child era, the swordsman has lamented the fact that he was not remembered as a hero. This is a fascinating idea, and a tragic end to the life of one of the greatest heroes in Hyrule's history, but there's nothing to back this up in the game itself. Once Link has learned every hidden skill from the Shade, the Undead Knight claims that, although he accepted life as the hero, he could not convey the lessons of that life to those who came after. At last, he has eased those regrets. While similar, this seems to suggest an entirely different motivation to the one outlined in Hyrule Historia. Instead of regretting that he was not remembered as a hero, he instead regrets that he had not been able to pass on his knowledge. Because it does seem that the Hero of Time was remembered as a hero, even in the Child Timeline branch. Though returning to the past erased the memory of the heroic acts of adult Link in this timeline, the Hero of Time was still etched into legend. Majora's Mask's intro sequence describes his legend as one held dearly by the royal family, one of a boy who, after battling evil and saving Hyrule, crept away from the land that had made him a legend. And centuries later, he is revered as the legendary hero chosen by the gods, and items he used have become sacred relics. So not only does it seem out of character for an incarnation of Link, the eternally selfless, stereotypical hero, to regret that others do not remember him as a hero, it just doesn't seem like that is the case for the Hero of Time. He was remembered, yet still remains to teach his descendant. This leaves us with a considerable gap in the Hero of Time's story. The Hero of Time left Hyrule in search of Navi, his companion, who mysteriously vanished once Link returned to the past. He travels through the Lost Woods, where he falls into Termina, a strange, almost dreamlike world doomed by the evil magic of Majora. The story of the Hero of Time following Majora's Mask is unknown. We know that he leaves Termina and returns to the Lost Woods on Epona, but nothing is known about his life after this. However, we can infer some small details about his life based on what we know for certain. For one, the Hero of Time must have grown up. For the Hero of Twilight to be his direct descendant, this Link must have reached adulthood and fathered children. With whom is, of course, unknown. Some people choose to believe that he returned to Hyrule to marry Malon, like Talon promised, but let's be real, the Hero of Time has no shortage of options. It also seems likely that the Hero of Time wielded the Master Sword once again. In the Child Timeline, the Hero of Time never used this blade, as his time as an adult was erased. So for a future version of the Child Hero of Time to possess the sword's scabbard, it's not a stretch to assume that, at some point, he took up the Sword that Seals the Darkness once again. If this is true, and the Hero of Time embarked on another, unseen adventure, this could have been where he achieved wider renown, performing feats of courage and heroism that were remembered by even the common folk, not just the royal family and his Goron brothers. Despite how much is unknown, the Hero's Shade story remains a tragic one. Even after losing his childhood in order to save Hyrule and Termina, the Hero of Time's sacrifice wasn't done. He was among the most legendary, accomplished heroes in Hyrule's history, but he had more to give. He had to share the wisdom and techniques he had learned from his difficult life with the hero that would succeed him. Until this was done, the hero of time was unable to let go, a broken spirit clinging to life in order to serve his kingdom one final time. In doing so, he became a hero who had not only conquered time, but death itself. The first time Link meets the Golden Wolf, it is without having visited a Howling Stone. Every subsequent time, the spirit must be summoned to the overworld by singing at one of these sites. And the first song Link and the Hero's Shade howl together is the Song of Healing, a melody that heals evil magic and troubled spirits, learned by the Hero of Time during his adventure in Termina. Perhaps the Hero's Shade howls this to soothe his own troubles, the regrets and sorrow of a weary adventurer. In Hyrule Castle, Link is able to access a hidden graveyard by burrowing under a wall as Wolf Link. This entire area is completely optional, used only to gain an extra small key to unlock a storeroom near the boss chamber, but it presents an interesting mystery. Here, Link can find two large gravestones with readable text, the first saying, "In the land where the rain stops, the statue of time moves," which is a hint on how to solve part of the area's puzzle by moving owl statues. But the other gravestone reads, "The cursed swordsman sleeps before the sacred tree." Now, this could be another hint for this area. Nearby, Link can find a tree surrounded by spirits of Hylian soldiers, all pointing to the ground. By bombing this spot, Link can find a switch, allowing him to proceed with the puzzle. But still, this doesn't fit particularly well, leaving this gravestone as something of a mystery. Who is the cursed swordsman, and what is the sacred tree he sleeps before? It's possible that the cursed swordsman referenced here is the Hero's Shade. We know that the Hero of Time was honoured by the royal family, so him having a gravestone in Hyrule Castle would make sense. But what about the sacred tree? Every time Link meets the Golden Wolf, it's after he's been summoned at a Howling Stone. Every time except the first, that is. The Hero's Shade first appears to Link without being called in Faron Woods, just outside of the Forest Temple, a sacred tree. Could this be what the gravestone is referring to? The Hero's Shade, a cursed swordsman, sleeps before the Forest Temple, a sacred tree. It's entirely possible, and if so, it adds a new level of depth to the Hero's Shade. It's left ambiguous what the Forest Temple actually is, but there are hints. The Kokiri crest can be seen, the symbol of the children of the forest. The Hero of Time's journey of course began in Kokiri Forest, guided by the Great Deku Tree. And here, centuries later, we find his spirit, waiting outside of the husk of a great tree deep in the heart of the Faron Woods. It's very possible that, in the end, the boy from the forest returned home. Every night, as the sun sets on Hyrule, the castle town raises its drawbridge and locks its gates. At nightfall, the dead claw their way to the surface of Hyrule Field, and mindlessly, violently attack the living who stray from the roads. These creatures are known as the Stal Children, which means skeletal children, and they crawl out of the earth in pairs. Though terrifying, their brittle frames can be easily shattered with sword strikes. Stal Children are the source of many childhood nightmares. They're one of the first few enemies Link is likely to encounter after leaving Kokiri Forest. If he doesn't make it across the field to Castletown in a single day, he'll have to wait out the night and hold off against an endless onslaught of the dead, unless he sticks to the road. Because of how early they're encountered in the game, and how terrifying they are, Stal Children are some of the most iconic Zelda enemies. But what are they? If they're the reanimated remains of dead people, who were they? The easy answer is that the Stal Children owe their miserable existence to one of the most important elements of Ocarina of Time's backstory, the Hyrulean Civil War. The Civil War is an incredibly vague part of Zelda lore. Throughout Ocarina of Time, we get little fragmented details of this conflict, like the purpose of the Shadow Temple, or how Link, a Hylian child, ended up in Kokiri Forest. Regardless of the details, we know that the war was violent and bloody, but ended with the unification of the Kingdom of Hyrule. So, the Hyrule we explore in Ocarina of Time is recovering from a terrible war that ended only a few years ago. The fact that countless corpses are buried below Hyrule Field then doesn't seem so strange. This open plain was more than likely the site for many battles during this conflict. The Stal children could be the remains of soldiers killed in battle, still clinging to a sliver of life and a single purpose: to kill. This is supported by Majora's Mask, where we again see Stal children, this time explicitly stated to be the dead soldiers of the Akana Kingdom. They serve Captain Kita, a giant Stal child, and remain loyal to their cause even in death. The fact that their captain is a giant also links back to Ocarina of Time, where killing multiple Stal children will cause a giant version to spawn. But the Stal children don't look like Hylians, or Gorons, or Zora, Gerudo, Sheikah, or any of the other races seen in Ocarina of Time. There's of course their diminutive stature that earns them their name, but also their strangely shaped skulls, which have snouts and giant teeth. This wouldn't be much of a problem. The lake scientist, for example, also has giant protruding teeth and a strangely shaped skull, but the Stal children have claws. Long, red, sharp claws with which they lunge at their targets. Ocarina of Time's regular Stalfos much more closely resemble dead Hylian soldiers. They're tall, armoured, they wield a sword and shield, and their skulls are human. We know that Stalfos are humans who become lost in the Lost Woods, and it's very possible that many of them were Hyrulean soldiers before their transformations. In comparison, the Stal children look nothing like soldiers. They're not much taller than Child Link and wear only a small skirt. Without Majora's Mask, which is a game where almost every character is an entirely different version of an Ocarina of Time NPC, there's nothing to suggest that these Stal children are the remains of soldiers. What exactly the Stal children are is a mystery. They more closely resemble Breath of the Wild's Stal Koblins than anything else, but even then there are clear differences between the two. Again, they could be the remains of soldiers killed during the Civil War, but there's not a lot to support this, and I think the game leaving them unexplained is part of the reason they're one of the most unsettling things in Ocarina of Time. Speaking of unsettling things in Ocarina of Time, there's not much that compares to the big man himself, Bongo Bongo. Bongo Bongo is fought as the boss of the Shadow Temple, after having escaped from his prison in the bottom of the Kakariko Well. It's known as the Phantom Shadow Beast, and appears as an unsettlingly human-like body, hanging limp from above. In place of a head, Bongo Bongo has a single red eye surrounded by flaps, and his hands have apparently been severed at the wrists. They now levitate in place. The fight against Bongo Bongo takes place on the surface of a giant drum, which the boss plays while singing in a strange, chanting voice. His body can only be seen when Link is wearing the Lens of Truth, allowing Link to take shots at its vulnerable eye. Aside from that it was sealed at the bottom of the well by Impa in the past, we don't know anything about the identity of Bongo Bongo. But the fact that it looks eerily human, with its hands cut from its wrists, coupled with the fact that it was sealed in a torture chamber below Kakariko Village, suggests an incredibly sinister backstory for this boss. A popular theory regarding Bongo Bongo's origins comes from a line from an old man in Kakariko Village, who tells Link that a long time ago, there was a man in this very village who had an eye they say could see the truth. Now, usually you have to train your mind's eye most strenuously to actually see the truth, but this fella, no, they say he had a different way of doing things. His house stood where the well is now. Obviously, this refers to the Lens of Truth, the Sheikah artifact that allows its bearer to see what is unseen. But it also lets us know that the lens's previous owner lived where the well is now. Considering that Bongo Bongo could well have once been human, judging by his appearance, that he was sealed below the well, and that he can only be seen with the Lens of Truth leads many to believe that the man in this story went on to become Bongo Bongo. Perhaps this man was executed for some crime and his hands cut off, but was then resurrected as the Phantom Shadow Beast. It's plausible, but there isn't a huge amount to support it. Every boss in Ocarina of Time is strongly linked to the themes of its dungeon. Goma is the parasite infecting the Deku Tree, Phantom Ganon appears in a mansion haunted by ghosts, Morpha controls water and is found at the bottom of Lake Hylia, and Bongo Bongo has severed hands and is found in a torture dungeon. The bottom of the well, and by extension the Shadow Temple, is perhaps the most famously creepy and mysterious place in a Zelda game. They're both abandoned facilities designed for interrogation and executions, for Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred. Bongo Bongo is inextricably linked to these sites, but we don't know anything about its origins for certain. Its identity remains one of the most disturbing mysteries in the series. Mekar Island is one of Breath of the Wild's strangest mysteries, and it's something I've dedicated an entire video to in the past. Found west of Korok Forest, Mekar Island is a tiny, unassuming landmass in the circular Lake Mekar. Strong winds blow in all directions away from the island, which is itself a barren mound of earth, decorated with a single dead tree standing over an extinguished campfire, some bushes, and, disturbingly, piles of bones. Under the tree is a large rock, which you'd think might hide a Korok, but instead it's just a gemstone. For whatever reason, if Link climbs the dead tree, strong winds blow to the east, which some people have pointed out could be a reference to Makar, the Sage of Wind for which the island and its lake are named, but it's pretty far-fetched. Mekar Island hides a strange secret. If Link waits until nightfall, or rests by the campfire, he'll find himself ambushed. A horde of Stal enemies of almost every variety crawl up from the ground, some wielding rare weapons like bomb arrows. The tight space on the island can make for a pretty difficult fight, especially if they take you by surprise. But that's it for Mekar Island. Aside from hiding an army of the dead to unleash on weary travellers resting until nighttime, the island serves no purpose. There are no Korok seeds, no other characters, no shrines, just a lonely, empty island that at night crawls with the undead. Back again to Ocarina of Time with the guardian deity of the Zora, Jabu Jabu. The deity is cared for by the Zora royal family, with Ruto in particular responsible for his meals day and night. Lord Jabu Jabu swims in the Zora fountain just behind their domain, where there is a small shrine dedicated to him. The Zora encourage all visitors to see him, and it is the legend of the Zora that offering a fish to the patron deity will bring happiness. However, 7 years later, Zora's domain is frozen solid and deserted. Only the shopkeeper and the king himself remain, imprisoned in red ice. The ice is the result of a curse, the source of which is found in the water temple, Morpha, a creation of Ganondorf with control over water. Link destroys the amoeba, but Zora's domain remains frozen. Ruto assures us that it will eventually thaw, and during the end credits it does, though it's still empty. While the domain is frozen, the Zora fountain is empty. Jabu Jabu is nowhere to be seen. Blocks of ice float in his place. His disappearance is never mentioned in-game, and we never get to explore Zora's domain once it's thawed out. In the adult's timeline, he has completely vanished. But the Zora fountain, where the deity swims, is a small, isolated pool of water. Jabu Jabu relies on the Zora for his meals day and night, so with them gone, might he have died like the guardian deity of the forest before him? Might the great Lord Jabu Jabu have starved, trapped in his lake without his attendants to feed him? His vanishing remains a mystery. One ill-fated day, misfortune befell me and my boat was destroyed. Clinging to the wreckage, I drifted at the whims of the waves. That's when I saw this monstrosity. This foul ship, veiled in mist and fading in and out of sight like something of another world. Yes, my young sir, 'tis none other than the Ghost Ship. The rumours I've heard tell of a man who researched the reaches of the sea where the ghost ship faded in and out of sight, and that he drew a map of its movements. but it is said that as soon as the man had finished drawing the lines of that cursed map, he died a most unexpected death. Chilling, truly chilling. Now, if one were able to find that man, then it might be possible to sneak onto the ghost ship and get the treasure that is said to lurk within its hull. Link encounters many things while sailing across the Wind Waker's Great Sea, but none of them is as strange or as sinister as the mysterious ghost ship. A foggy mirage of a large vessel, sailing an impossible voyage on tattered sails, the ghost ship can be encountered off the coast of various islands across the sea. Its appearance always heralds a storm. Flashes of lightning ink its dark shape against the light. Link can sail towards it, but can't touch it. If he gets too close, the ship will dissolve like smoke. For much of Link's adventure, these sightings seem random, a bad omen perhaps, haunting Link's adventure across the Great Sea. That is, until he finds the ghost ship chart, hidden in a chest among the broken hulls of old ships beneath Diamond Step Isle. This chart, a map whose creation caused the death of its maker, reveals that the ghost ship sightings are tied to the phases of the moon. Beneath a full moon, it sails near Crescent Moon Island. A fishman off the coast of this island warns Link, "You'd best be careful sailing these waters on nights when the moon is full." Well, if you like pure, soul-freezing horror, Fry, then maybe you can handle it. With the ghost ship chart in his inventory, Link can not only locate the phantom vessel, but board it. Possession of the map stops the ship from vanishing, allowing Link to sail inside. The screen fades out, and Link finds himself in its hull. As you'd expect for a ghost ship, it's full of enemies, and if Link defeats them, he'll gain access to a chest at the back, containing either a Triforce chart or a shard of the Triforce of Courage itself, depending on the version. But there's another detail here which is easily missed, and can only be seen in the original version of the game. Behind the chest is a painting of a face, a visage whose expression changes as Link moves, from a blank, soulless stare to a sinister, toothed smile. Stranger still, once Link loots this chest, he's immediately teleported out of the ship after hearing this sound, which is actually a sped up version of this unused sound found in the game's files. A sound effect assigned to Jaboon, the water spirit, perhaps originally meant to be used when he was in pain, or even dying, but was cut from the final version. Link awakens back on the deck of the King of Red Lions, exactly where he was when the screen faded out. And following this, the ghost ship is never seen again, which begs the question, did Link really explore its interior, or was it a hallucination? The ghost ship is one of the Zelda series' most fascinating mysteries. Though it is essential to completing the game, there's so much about it that is left unexplained. But there are clues, enough for us to guess at the story behind the ghost ship, what it was, and why it lingers on. It's worth noting that the Wind Waker's ghost ship is an entirely separate vessel to Phantom Hourglass's ghost ship, which attacks Tetra's pirate ship at the beginning of that game and sends Link to the world of the Ocean King. Phantom Hourglass's ghost ship not only has a different design, but is explicitly stated to be a creation of that game's antagonist, Bellum. In contrast, we're never told exactly what the Wind Waker's ghost ship is. Outside of the fishmen, and Tingle through the Tingle Tuner, only two characters mention this ghost ship. First is Lenzo, the owner of the pictograph shop on Windfall Island, who sighted the ship after his own was wrecked, and who explains to Link the origins of the ghost ship chart. The second is David Jr., Though he wears a similar outfit and helps spin Tingle Tower, David Jr. isn't related to Tingle. Instead, he was a treasure hunter. His figurine description describes how a 17-year-old David Jr. set out to sea with dreams of finding the treasure of the ghost ship that his now deceased father once saw. He gets seasick quite easily, and was in such a state when he awoke in a daze on Tingle Island. Considering how Tingle himself has a fascination with maps and can decipher Link's Triforce charts for him, it would be quite ironic if David Jr.'s dad, despite having no relation to Tingle, was the cartographer responsible for the ghost ship chart. Both David Jr.'s father and this mystery mapmaker are said to have seen the ghost ship, and both are now dead. Regardless, these tales describe how the ship has haunted the Great Sea for some time, at least 10 years, and how it, and the treasure it holds, has become a popular myth, a ghost story for sailors to tell at night. We never learn much about the ship from these tales, except for how it terrifies those that see it, and it seems to be cursed, almost as if it doesn't want to be found. But we can learn more about it by examining the ship itself. The mysterious laugh and moving painting aren't the only oddities inside the ghost ship. On one side of the ship, a broken section of the hull allows a shaft of sunlight to pierce through the gloom, and basking in its warmth, a single cluster of flowers. In the original version, by looking up, past the splintered wood and out into the purple mist that chokes the ship's interior, we can see shapes flowing through the darkness. Human figures, their mouths open, perhaps the lost spirits of this ship's original crew, now imprisoned inside, trapped between life and death. In the HD version, the hull is more intact, and we can't see outside into this sea of souls, but instead the ground is carpeted in a purple fog, in which the faces of these same spirits dance. Examining the ship's exterior reveals that it is almost identical to Tetra's pirate ship, only with a different color palette, torn sails, and a different figurehead. While the pirate ship features this serpent or dragon at the front, the ghost ship instead features this. A human figure, hands drawn together in front of its chest, almost like in prayer. It's a strange design. The figurehead features bright yellows, oranges, and blues, and seems to be wearing a sort of headdress. Its design is very evocative of Egyptian figurines, which could be the final clue pointing towards the history of this ship. In Zelda games, particularly in Ocarina of Time, Egyptian architecture and symbolism is used by the Gerudo tribe, the clan of desert warrior women seen most explicitly in the Spirit Temple. And notably, the Gerudo appeared in Majora's Mask as pirates, found in their pirate's fortress near the Great Bay. So the fact that the ghost ship so closely resembles Tetra's pirate ship, coupled with its oddly Egyptian figurehead, could point towards its original crew being Gerudo pirates. And this would make perfect sense with the world of the Wind Waker. The Gerudo are notably absent in the Wind Waker, outside of Ganondorf, of course, a male Gerudo from the era of Ocarina of Time who had been sealed below the Great Sea until recently. This stands out as odd. Ocarina of Time's other major races are all represented here. The Kokiri as the Koroks, the Zora as the Rito, even the Gorons, who are now traveling merchants. The Gerudo never appear. But perhaps they did once sail the Great Sea as pirates, just like they did in Majora's Mask. We actually learn about another group of pirates near the beginning of the game, where Tetra explains that, before Ganondorf took over, the Forsaken Fortress was home to a rival pirate gang they used to compete with. A group who, while dangerous, were relatively small time compared to the King of Evil himself. And this is clear from the design of the fortress itself. Scores of anchors are draped over its tree-like stone branches like trophies from conquered foes. Might the original inhabitants of the Forsaken Fortress have been Gerudo pirates? It's possible. The fortress is located in the northwest of the Great Sea, lining up well with the location of the Gerudo's fortress in Ocarina of Time, an idea which is supported by the Zelda Encyclopedia. If this is the case, and the rival gang of pirates Tetra's crew used to compete against were Gerudo, then it means that by taking over the Forsaken Fortress, Ganondorf forcibly removed, or even killed, his own people. This would make his speech at the end of the game even more hypocritical, where he claims that his goals were noble, a crusade for the good of his people rather than a selfish lust for power. Ganondorf's actions are already at odds with his words here, but would be even more so if he slaughtered a crew of Gerudo pirates to take their stronghold from them, people who would have been the distant descendants of his own kin. Regardless of the truth of this, all we know for certain is that, by the time of Link's adventure, the Gerudo are gone, except, perhaps, for a single, spectral ship. Why this ghost ship lingers on is difficult to answer, but it seems most likely that it was because of its treasure. The ghost ship's treasure is at the heart of its legend, and once Link obtains it, the ship vanishes forever. Perhaps its crew of pirates stole something they should not have stolen, a chart leading to, or a shard of, the Triforce of Courage itself, a black deed that doomed their vessel to its endless, undying voyage. By reclaiming the ghost ship's treasure, Link breaks its curse, granting the ship, and the spirits within it, peace at last. But in doing so, he also erases the final trace of the Gerudo from the Great Sea, a bittersweet end to a once proud people, now lost to time, save for the monster that their king has become. Breath of the Wild's characters are often full of personality, charm, and heart. Characters like Cass, a wandering Rito minstrel, or Beedle, a Zelda staple who appears just as eccentric and animated as we've come to expect from the beetle-loving salesman. But not only is Hyrule filled with the wonderful, it's just as often filled with the weird. And few are stranger than Hino, a man dedicated to researching the phases of the moon found at the Dueling Peaks stable. Except for when it rains, Hino stands just outside of the stables, staring into the sky, and will let Link know what phase the moon is in, including what's most likely a neat little Majora's Mask reference. However, Hyrule's moon isn't quite normal. On nights when Ganon's power waxes, the moon is stained a blood red, and malice fills the air. With this surge of power, the Calamity resurrects all fallen monsters across Hyrule. Slain foes are once again given flesh under the crimson sky. This phenomenon is something which Hino has apparently extensively researched, and is the central focus of his interest in the moon. On one of these fateful nights, Hino informs Link that he's getting the feeling that something's going to happen. He can taste it. The blood moon is coming at last. But what happens to Hino during this night itself is what edges the character from eccentric into downright unsettling. As the blood moon begins to rise, Hino quickly becomes hysterical, seemingly possessed by the moon's power. He begins to sprint in circles around the stable, screaming things such as "blood, it's so red, so gloriously red," claiming that his blood is boiling and calling for the monsters of the world to arise. After this resurrection has occurred, Hino returns to his normal position, gloomily muttering that the blood moon has come and gone and that it's time to start waiting for the next one. He's calm and rational again. Ganon's power has waned, and whatever strange madness it caused in Hino has vanished. As far as I know, he's the only character who reacts this way to the blood moon. sprinting around, screaming for blood, calling for the resurrection of monsters, growling and claiming that his blood boils. Either this mania was caused by Ganon's power somehow taking hold of Hino's mind, or the researcher was fully aware of what he was doing during the blood moon, and he's just deliriously, hysterically excited to see the phenomenon and the resurrection of monsters. And I don't know which possibility is more terrifying. Ikana Valley is one of the eeriest places in the series. It was once the site of the great kingdom of Ikana, a prosperous, powerful nation, but is now a graveyard, abandoned save for the tormented spirits which haunt it. One of the first locations visited in the Ikana region is the Music Box House, the home of Pamela and her father, a scientist specializing in the supernatural. Pamela's father moved from Clocktown to the Ikana region to pursue his research, and at first, his studies in the region were a success. He discovered a song which drives away Gibdos, fittingly named the Farewell to Gibdos, and turned his house into a giant gramophone, powered by a water wheel, constantly playing this song, defending it against the undead. However, when Link reaches the house, something's wrong. No music is playing, and Gibdos swarm around the building like flies to a corpse. The river has dried up, stopping the water wheel, and strangely, the Gibdos seem to want the release of some of their own, apparently somewhere within the house, and when Link tries to enter, Pamela mistakes him for one of the dead, shouting, "My father is not one of you." After Link discovers the spring water cave and plays the Song of Storms to free the composer brother Sharp's soul from a curse, the river once again starts to flow, and the music resumes, driving the Gibdos away from the house. With the undead gone, Pamela begins sneaking out of the house to check on the nearby well, leaving the door unlocked behind her, which allows Link to finally access the mysterious musical house. Inside, he'll find a snug living area, a dining table, fireplace, chest of drawers, and family photographs. But the basement level is where things get interesting. Below the ground lies the machinery behind the music. Great gears, pipes, and speakers, churning and grinding as the Farewell to Gibdos plays. But against the far wall is an ornate wardrobe, shut tight. When Link approaches it, the doors fly open, revealing a figure within, the shambling, groaning shape of a Gibdo. Except this Gibdo has a face, a human face, twisted in agony, one uncovered eye stained a bright yellow, and its mouth hanging open in an endless moan. If Link tries to attack the monster, Pamela will burst into the room, putting herself between the Gibdo and the hero's blade. The creature leans over her, still groaning, before it recoils, holding its head in confusion, apparently recognizing the young girl. Pamela pleads for Link to leave and forget everything he's seen in the basement. But if Link doesn't raise his blade to the Gibdo, but instead plays the Song of Healing, there's a different outcome. The music tears away the creature's suffering, leaving behind a living Hylian man, Pamela's father. Pamela herself enters the house and embraces her father, who apparently has no recollection of his time as a Gibdo. The young girl assures the man that he was just having a nightmare, but the events were very real. The Gibdo's mask lies nearby on the floor, what was once the hideous face of Pamela's father. Once cured, Pamela's father will explain that the well nearby hides a valuable treasure, but is haunted by the spirits of those who have entered the dungeon in search of it, now doomed to linger on beneath the ground as Gibdos. He mentions that he himself tried to enter the well once, but he doesn't remember anything that happened there. Piecing this together, it seems that Pamela's father, a scientist interested in the undead, ventured into the nearby well in search of its legendary treasure. However, as it had done with so many before him, the well cursed the scientist, dooming him to suffer endlessly as a Gibdo. However, somehow, the father was not lost in the well. He was instead sealed within a wardrobe in his basement, trapped in darkness as the curse took hold of him, and he began his slow transformation into a Gibdo. Whether it was he himself who found his way back from the well, or the actions of his brilliant daughter, we'll never know. But the fate of Pamela's father, had the hero of time not cured him, is one of the creepiest things in Majora's Mask. Of all Zelda's various characters, few are as infamous as Tingle. This wannabe fairy of course first appeared in Majora's Mask, functioning as a cartographer, selling Link maps of Termina's various areas, which he draws from up high on his balloon. While he's definitely weird here, he's not particularly creepy. That is, until we get to the Wind Waker. What is arguably Tingle's most iconic appearance in the series begins in the dingy jail on Windfall Island, where he's apparently been imprisoned for stealing a Picto box. This, along with the fact that skulls can be found in a tunnel leading off from his cell, already paints a more sinister picture for the spandex-wearing chap. But the darker side of the Wind Waker's Tingle only truly becomes evident later on, when Link is able to explore Tingle Island. This isle's hard to miss, featuring a giant totem pole-like tower with designs like fairies, a moblin head, choo-choos, and of course Tingle himself. The tower was actually built by one of Tingle's younger brothers, Knuckle, who finished the structure when he was 10 years old. And for whatever reason, it seems that the tower requires rotating through manual labour. Of course, this labour isn't done by Knuckle, who's missing for a large portion of the game until the player finds all 5 Tingle statues in the HD version, or by using the Tingle tuner in the original. It's not done by Tingle either, who lounges around on the decking, waiting for Link to come and play. The tower is instead rotated by Ankle, another of Tingle's younger brothers, and David Jr., a character who wears the same outfit as the brothers, but isn't actually related to them. David Jr. explains that he was once a sailor, travelling across the Great Sea when he was caught in a terrible storm. A giant twister began spinning his ship, which is the last thing he remembers, until he awoke on Tingle Island, dressed in the same clothes as Tingle and his brothers, forced to rotate the tower endlessly. Ultimately, David Jr. realizes that telling Link his story is useless. It won't do any good, and it sure won't get Tingle off his back. Apparently, on days on which Link visits, Tingle is happy and will be nice to his brothers. Ankle pleads for Link to return to the island, as Tingle will get out of sorts if left alone. Ankle and David Jr. complain about rotating the tower, mentioning how heavy it is and glumly muttering that their lives are so very hard, but Tingle still just stands there, watching, refusing to help. It's cruelly ironic how Tingle claims that Tingle Tower spins and spins due to wonderful fairy magic, when in truth it spins only because of the endless slave labour of Tingle's younger brother Ankle and a kidnapped sailor, David Jr., both dressed in the same clothes as a wannabe fairy. Tingle's always treading the line between eccentric and creepy, but I've always felt that in the Wind Waker he definitely swings towards the latter. While on the surface he's the same excited, bubbly character as always, the closer we look, the more it's apparent that there's something sinister going on with how Tingle treats his brothers, and especially David Jr., a man who was once a sailor, but was unfortunate enough to wash up on the shores of Tingle Island. While all regions of Termina are home to a menagerie of weird and eerie characters, some of the strangest exist outside of this world, within the moon itself. At the climax of Majora's Mask, when Link summons the 4 giants on the 3rd day to halt the moon's descent, the Skull Kid collapses to the floor, and it seems as if disaster has been averted and the land saved. However, the mask itself was far from defeated. Lifting the Skull Kid's limp body like a puppet, the mask explains that the imp was merely a tool which no longer has any use. The mask enters the moon, forcing it down towards Clocktown, lighting its eyes like brilliant flames. As even the godlike giants now struggle to hold the moon, Link only has one option: follow the mask inside and face the evil once and for all. In contrast to the moon's terrifying exterior, its insides are bizarrely calming. A lone tree on a hill, surrounded by lush green fields under a bright blue sky. But this peaceful place soon becomes unsettling. Under the lone tree are 5 masked children, 4 dancing and playing together, with the last sat in a fetal position alone. If spoken to, the 4 dancing children will respond with strange, cryptic remarks, such as asking if Link too will become a mask salesman. Of course, these 4 masked children each wear one of the masks of the game's 4 main bosses, and transport Link to mini-challenges based around Link's 4 main forms. which are completely optional and can only be fully completed if Link has obtained every mask in the game. The fifth child, found under the tree, if spoken to, will simply ask, "Will you play with me?" initiating the final battle against Majora's Mask. If Link has completed all of the mini-dungeons within the moon, the fifth child will instead suggest they play good guys against bad guys, and gift Link the most powerful mask in the game, the Fierce Deity's Mask, which transforms Link into a warrior of godlike power. The moon is absolutely the strangest final challenge in a Zelda game, a surreal, dreamlike world inhabited by some of the game's creepiest characters. 5 childlike beings who speak only in cryptic riddles. I've always interpreted the Moon Children as different facets of Majora's twisted, insane personality, manifested as playful, apparently innocent children. But there's more mystery to it than that. The children all wear the face of the happy mask salesman, the original owner of Majora's Mask, and ask Link questions such as, "Will you, too, become a mask salesman?" The fact that they're children, too, has a connection to Link's form during this game as Child Link, after being sent back through time by Princess Zelda at the end of Ocarina of Time. The game leaves this final section completely to the player's interpretation, and I couldn't see a game as weird and surreal as Majora's Mask ending any other way. There's something incredibly unsettling about these beings. Their appearance, dialogue, even the rooms in which they're found inside the mini-dungeons, designed like children's playrooms with cloud-patterned wallpaper, a colourful rug, and 4 building blocks featuring the moon's grimacing face. Who, or what, the Moon Children were is a mystery, but they're definitely some of Zelda's creepiest characters. When Link pulled the Master Sword in Ocarina of Time, the bright, thriving kingdom of Hyrule was thrown into the past. 7 long years passed by in an instant, and the hero awakened into a ruined land. The kingdom's capital, its buildings blistered and burned, stood abandoned, save for the tortured souls of the Redeads, shuffling and moaning in the empty streets. But in this deserted town, one individual remained. A being who treads the line between the living and the dead. One of the oldest mysteries in Ocarina of Time, the Poe Collector. The Poe Collector is a tall, gaunt figure, hunched over and shrouded in a purple cloak. He holds a stick in his right hand, and a single, ominous light glows from under his hood, perhaps an eye staring out from the darkness. He'll buy Poe Souls from Link, paying 10 rupees for each, or 50 rupees for each big Poe. If Link collects all 10 big Poes in Hyrule Field, worth 1,000 points, the Poe Hunter will reward him with an empty bottle, one of only 4 in the game. Of course, the Poe Collector also makes an appearance in Majora's Mask, a strange advisor encountered in Ikana Valley. However, it's unlikely that this is the same individual found in Ocarina of Time, as the vast majority of Termina's residents are identical to characters found in Ocarina of Time, but are not the same. In Ocarina of Time, this mysterious figure is one of the strangest in a game full of strange individuals, making forward remarks to Link, as well as claiming to be able to read minds. He has respect for the great Ganondorf for ruining the world and allowing a business like his to thrive, hoping that the world gets even worse. The identity of this sinister salesman has long been debated, as he can't be found in the past, only appearing after the fall of Castletown. The 2 most commonly discussed candidates are the boy found in the Kakariko graveyard, who idolizes Dampé the Gravekeeper, and the guard found in the same spot as the Poe Collector 7 years earlier. While there's some valid points in favour of the graveyard boy, like both holding a stick, I believe it was always the intent for the Poe Collector to be the future version of the guardhouse soldier. Not only are both characters found in the exact same location, 7 years apart, but the soldier's dialogue hints at a darker side to his personality. When approached in the day, the soldier will claim that he thinks it would be more interesting if there were more troubles in the world. And when approached at night, he says, "I wish some ghosts would come out or something." Hey, I'm really interested in ghosts. Studying them is a hobby of mine, but you never know, the time might come when that kind of knowledge might be useful. So this soldier, who wishes the world was more chaotic and has an avid interest in ghosts, is replaced after Ganondorf's rise to power by a cloaked individual who specialises in the collection of ghosts, and loves the ruined state of Hyrule, going as far as to wish that the world would get even worse. This, in addition to the Poe Collector's Triforce emblem on his lower torso, a symbol worn by soldiers of Hyrule, pretty solidly connects the guardhouse soldier to the Poe Collector in my eyes. However, knowing the possible identity of the Poe Collector doesn't solve the deeper mysteries of this character. Why does he seemingly lack a face, having only a single glowing eye? Why is he buying Poes in the first place, creatures he describes as spirits of concentrated hatred? Did the guard willingly become this sinister figure, or was it the result of Ganondorf's magic? We'll never know for sure, but the Collector stands out as one of Ocarina of Time's darker characters. I've often talked about how the ambiguity of Zelda's world building and lore is a part of what makes it so interesting. As the player, we aren't given all the answers to what we find in Hyrule. Often huge parts of the game's stories are left deliberately unexplained. These mysteries can be poignant and thought-provoking, like the disappearance of Navi at the end of Ocarina of Time, but others range from unsettling to downright terrifying. Today, let's run through some creepy or strange Zelda mysteries. Of all the many songs Link can play on his ocarina, the Elegy of Emptiness is perhaps the most enigmatic. It's taught to Link by King Egos du Ikana, who says it will summon a soldier who has no heart. Playing it will cause Link to shed an empty shell, a mirror image of himself seemingly carved from wood. The shell created differs depending on which form Link is in. When he's wearing the Zora mask, Goron mask, or Deku mask, the shells created resemble Mikau, Darmani, and the Deku Butler's son, the deceased people whose spirits are contained within these masks. This is interesting because the Elegy of Emptiness isn't just creating mirror images, it's creating shells based on the spirit of the person who plays the song. While wearing the Goron mask, Link looks completely different to the statue created by the song. It creates a statue based on the appearance of Darmani, the spirit responsible for the Goron mask's power to give Link the appearance and abilities of a Goron. So, what happens when Link plays the Elegy of Emptiness without wearing a mask, while in his Hylian form? Instead of the blank, dead eyes of the spirits of the masks, this shell, supposedly the mirror image of Link, stares with clear blue eyes. Its face is eerily human, yet very different to Link's, its mouth pulled into a strange grimace. If the Elegy of Emptiness creates these shells based on the soul or spirit of whoever plays the song, then who's this? Shouldn't it just be a perfect copy of Link? There are countless theories on who this statue is and what it means, but the truth behind the Elegy of Emptiness remains a mystery. Below the cold earth, sealed in the thick darkness of forgotten tombs, the Redeads walk. Emaciated, unsettlingly human figures shuffle through the blackness, their faces hidden behind strange wooden masks. What exactly the Redeads are is a mystery in itself, one I've covered before on the channel, but perhaps just as interesting is the way these creatures interact with one another. In their debut game, Ocarina of Time, Redeads will ordinarily keep distance from one another, waiting to paralyze their prey with a blood-curdling scream before moving in for the kill. But if you manage to avoid the grasp of decaying arms and slay a Redead, it will curl up into the fetal position on the floor, where it will remain for some time before vanishing. This is completely different to how most enemies are defeated, where they immediately explode. This strange death happens in the Wind Waker too. Though they still burst into a purple cloud like other enemies, they only do so after lying still on the ground for a long time. In Ocarina of Time, the death of a Redead causes others nearby to behave quite strangely. When the dying enemy curls up on the floor, other Redeads will begin to shuffle towards it. Because they're so slow, they'll rarely reach their lost kin before it disappears, but if they do, they'll crouch down over its corpse. It's not clear exactly what the other Redeads are doing here. Perhaps they aren't just mindless monsters and this is them mourning the loss of one of their own. Or perhaps they're cannibalizing their dead, crouching down to consume the rotting flesh. I don't know which answer is creepier. Either they're eating fallen Redeads, or they're sentient enough to feel sadness and mourn for their kin. Tail Cave is the first dungeon in Link's Awakening, found just north of Toronbo Shores. It protects the full moon cello, the first instrument of the sirens that will allow Link to wake the windfish and escape Koholint Island. The cello is guarded by Moldorm, a giant worm boss which tries to knock Link off its platform, causing him to fall into a room below and have to restart the fight. If you fall down from Moldorm's chamber, you'll end up in a room with 3 skeletons hanging from their necks on metal chains. This was present in the original game too, 3 skeletons, loosely clothed in rags, hanging from the ceiling. Considering Moldorm doesn't imprison or hang its victims, it simply crushes them or knocks them off its platform, you have to wonder who these skeletons were, and why they're found hanging here. Of course, there is the fact that, spoiler alert, Koholint is all just the dream of the windfish, meaning that these skeletons aren't real. But the people within this dream do appear to be sentient. They live out their lives oblivious to the truth about their reality. So perhaps these hanging corpses did once belong to people living on Koholint Island, imprisoned and hanged with chains for some unknown crime or by some unknown foe. For the countless peaceful years before Breath of the Wild, the Calamity Ganon was remembered as little more than a fairy tale, a boogeyman to scare children at night. So when the beast rose from deep below the castle and a familiar shadow fell on Hyrule, the kingdom's people would have been terrified. A monster from storybooks, here in the flesh. But Ganon's return wasn't completely out of the blue. It had been foretold in prophecy, and the king had put in place an ancient defense mechanism to neutralize the threat. Hundreds of mobile automated guardians were excavated and restored, and looming over all were the 4 mighty divine beasts, piloted by Hyrule's 4 greatest warriors. Ganon, though, was cunning. He sent forth his malice to seize control of the Guardians, bringing the war machines under his control, and sent blights, essentially phantom Ganons, to the divine beasts. Though the heroes within fought bravely, one by one they fell to the blights, and within minutes, the beasts too belonged to Ganon. The Blight Ganons themselves have a strange appearance. Each is made primarily of malice, the energy of the Calamity, which makes sense. They were sent to the divine beasts as globs of malice. But they're also built from Sheikah tech. Funnels, vents, limbs, even weaponry appear to be Sheikah made. Obviously, Sheikah tech was made over 10,000 years ago, during the era of the tribe's prosperity, when the technological advancements won the kingdom peace. So perhaps the Blight Ganons are simply the result of Ganon's malice fusing with Sheikah tech that was already found within the divine beasts. We know that the Calamity Ganon's horrific form was the result of his malice splicing itself with Sheikah technology in a desperate attempt to rebuild a physical body, so this is most likely the case for the Blight Ganons too. However, the closer we look at the Blights, the stranger things get. They aren't just fused with seemingly random Sheikah armaments, they're each specifically kitted out to mirror their divine beast's respective champion. Fireblight Ganon wields a single huge blade, like Daruk, and uses an ability uncannily similar to Daruk's protection. Waterblight Ganon uses a weapon resembling a spear and has a degree of control over water like Mipha. Thunderblight Ganon can control lightning and wields a sword and shield just like Urbosa, and Windblight Ganon can summon tornadoes and uses a powerful ranged weapon like Revali. Each Blight is designed almost as a mockery of their champion. Hyrule's greatest warriors lost in their duels against these monsters, which used their own skills and abilities against them. The mighty Daruk was overpowered by Fireblight. The master marksman Revali lost in a firefight with Windblight. It's poetic, but story-wise, how did this happen? As I said earlier, Sheikah technology is a lost art. Aside from some exceptions like Robbie, who was able to cobble together ancient daggers into the makeshift ancient arrows, nobody can work with it or create new Sheikah weapons until long after the calamity when the scientist sets up Cherry. Ganon isn't capable of creating it either, just corrupting it and seizing it for his own use. Which means, before Malice was sent to the Divine Beasts, even as far back as 10,000 years ago, there must have existed some Sheikah technology there that closely matched the weapons and combat styles of the Beasts' future champions. So, perhaps the Sheikah, with their incredible gift of clairvoyance, foresaw the champions of Hyrule as the Beasts' pilots and built weapons for them. This would work, and would explain why the weapons that Ganon corrupted were found within the beasts in the first place. Except for the fact that the Blights, and their weapons, are completely different sizes to the champions. Thunderblight is the closest in size, being the smallest Blight, but just looking at the difference between Mipha and Waterblight Ganon shows that these weapons can't have been intended for use by these champions. In truth, we don't know what the Blights really are, aside from phantoms birthed from Malice. Somehow, it's clear that they pervert some Sheikah technology found within the beasts, which results in killing machines that eerily mirror their intended targets. At some point on Hyrule's darkest night, Daruk, Urbosa, Mipha and Revali must have felt their strength failing as they clashed with Ganon's spawn, not only faced with the reality of failing their kingdom and their people, but being beaten at their own game. The Stone Tower Temple is one of Zelda's strangest dungeons. It's found in the Ikana region of Termina, a broken kingdom plagued by a curse, the ruins of which are home now only to the dead. The temple itself makes use of light puzzles and inversion, and its boss, Twin Mold, is fought using the Giant's Mask in a sprawling, mysterious desert. The dungeon has two mini-bosses, the Garrow Master, an undead general of a nation at war with Ikana, and Gomez. Immediately, Gomez's appearance is strange. He resembles the Grim Reaper, cloaked in shadowy black robes and wielding a huge scythe. Strangely, Gomez seems to be made out of bats. They cover his body and must be scattered with the use of a light arrow before the enemy can be damaged. It seems as if the true source of Gomez's power, or the true essence of Gomez itself, is the small green orb shielded within its chest. Damaging this orb is the only way to actually damage the boss. The lore of the Ikana region is incredibly sparse and deliberately vague. It's one of the most mysterious areas in the Zelda series. With the knowledge of the ancient kingdom and the war they fought against the Garrow, we can piece together parts of the Ikana story, but not Gomez. It's never explained. Its connection to Ikana or to the Stone Tower Temple is never revealed. The Stalchild skull found adorning the monster's scythe hints at a sinister connection between Gomez and the people of the Ikana kingdom. It's a region inextricably linked to death and sorrow, and so an enemy designed to resemble the Grim Reaper, carrying with him an Ikanan skull, fits thematically. Gomez could symbolize the sad state of the Ikana region, a literal appearance of death itself. It's interesting that it can only be wounded by attacking this green orb. This is a common characteristic of a Lich, an undead necromancer who seeks eternal life. Traditionally, Liches hide or secure their life essence in what's called a phylactery, a physical object that stores their soul so they can live on even after their bodies are destroyed. Perhaps Gomez might be an example of a Lich, a powerful sorcerer which stores its life essence in a strange green orb. Regardless, the identity of Gomez remains yet another unsolved mystery in Majora's Mask. The Earth Temple is one of two Sage dungeons in the Wind Waker. Along with the Wind Temple, where Makar awakens as the Sage of Wind, the Earth Temple is where Medli learns of her purpose to grant the Master Sword its sacred power to repel evil as the Sage of Earth. This was the ancient purpose of the Earth Temple, just as it was with the Wind, a place designed to house a sage. For an age, this sage was Laruto, a Zora born in Zora's domain. We know that the temple was built by, or controlled by, the Hyrulean royal family, or their servants the Sheikah, at some point, evidenced by the royal crest found in the boss chamber, just like the Wind Temple. The Earth Temple was located on top of one of Hyrule's tallest peaks, meaning that it's still possible to access it from islands on the Great Sea. The temple did once have another entrance to access from Hyrule, though now it's buried beneath the waves. The Earth Temple is accessed from Headstone Island, obviously named because of the giant stone head that blocks the entrance. But Headstone has another meaning, a tombstone, a slab designed to mark a grave. By lifting the stone head and descending into the Earth Temple, Link lowers himself into the realm of the dead. Because, despite its holy purpose, the Earth Temple is dark. As well as a place for a sage to pray, it's a crypt where the dead rest. Its halls are filled with rows of stone coffins. Ancient, crumbling columns and passageways covered in depictions of skulls and even scythes, like that of the Grim Reaper, give the Earth Temple the feeling of a mausoleum or underground catacombs designed to house the dead. According to the King of Red Lions, the Earth Temple has become the nest of an evil creature, Jalhalla, the same creature that took Laruto's life long ago. The sage explains that once Ganon broke free of his seal, he returned to Hyrule in a red wrath. He attacked the Earth Temple and killed Laruto, knowing that he had to remove the Master Sword's power. Jalhalla itself is apparently the ruler of all Poes. While it takes the form of a gigantic ghost, its body is actually made of a group of smaller Poes. Jalhalla itself seems to be just a mask. After Link defeats the Poes, the mask tries to escape, but is vanquished by the light. Jalhalla shares Mulgara's title of Protector of the Seal. The bosses were summoned by Ganondorf to strip the Master Sword of its power to repel evil. Laruto claims that Ganondorf stole her soul, so it could be that Jalhalla protects a seal on the soul of the Sage of Earth, Laruto. Once defeated, the seal is broken, and Laruto can pass the torch on to Medli and restore power to the blade. As with any dungeon full of monsters, it's difficult to tell which were found here because of Ganon's power and influence, and which, if any, were here before. We know that Jalhalla was sent by Ganondorf to kill Laruto, and the dungeon is infested with moblins, Ganon's elite minions. Perhaps the temple was once a quiet house of the dead, a place of both burial and prayer, until it became the nest of Jalhalla, who breathed new life into the corpses found there. Except for this. The Earth Temple's central icon, found in the main chamber, appears to be a statue of a re-dead. It's a grey figure with a nightmarish grin, with hooped earrings and white tattoos. The statue supports itself on its hands, like it's crawling out of a grave, lifting itself up to look towards the cage where Medli will be trapped if she's taken by a floor master. A prisoner in this cell would see nothing but the re-dead smiling back at them. Re-deads are weak to light, and once Link has the mirror shield, he and Medli are able to reflect light onto the re-dead statue, transforming it into a beaming sun, the triumph of light over darkness. There's another re-dead face puzzle later on in the dungeon, an integral part of the room, making it likely that these statues long predate Ganondorf's return and Jalhalla's presence in the dungeon. The same could be said for the mini-boss chamber. The Earth Temple's doors are carved with a skull wreathed in flame, similar to a bubble, but the mini-boss room's door has a large, horned skull. Inside, the room is designed to enshrine the mirror shield, the key to bringing light into the darkness. But it's also lined with coffins, each containing a Stalfos, with a third lurking beneath the ground. The carving on the door warns outsiders that the dead walk inside. In Ocarina of Time, Stalfos are what becomes of people who are lost in the woods. It's not clear what they are in the Wind Waker. They don't look human. They do bear some similarities to the servants of Egos du Ikana from Majora's Mask. They were once the best swordsmen in the kingdom, but are now Stalfos, wearing hats with a red plume. Perhaps the Wind Waker's Stalfos were once great warriors, like this scrapped design for a Swordmaster enemy. Either way, it seems that they were deliberately entombed here alongside the Mirror Shield, to guard the Earth Temple's most important treasure. The Wind Waker's Redeads resemble mummies. Though they're emaciated and discoloured and emerge from coffins, they've been preserved, marked with tattoos and jewellery. If the Earth Temple represents the relationship between light and darkness, life and death, nowhere is this highlighted better than the Redeads, creatures that seem to be deliberately preserved in a state somewhere between living and dead. No wonder the dungeon's halls echo with their screams. The builders of the Earth Temple were aware of the Redeads. They're as important a part of this labyrinth as the stones that it's built from. These undead terrors predate Ganondorf and have always lurked in the depths of the temple. In many ways, these Redead resemble the Sheikah monks in Breath of the Wild. Both are emaciated, skeletal figures with blue skin, white tattoos and gold jewellery. Ocarina of Time's Shadow Temple shows us a much darker side to the Sheikah tribe. It's a torture chamber built to interrogate enemies of the royal family during the Hyrulean Civil War. Perhaps the Wind Waker's Redeads were Sheikah, who, much like the monks, underwent a mummification process, perhaps to defend the temple forever. The Earth Temple was built for a holy purpose, to house a sage of the Master Sword. But even before Ganon's influence, it was a temple designed to venerate death. It could be that for the sacred sword to retain its power to repel evil, to prevent the death that Ganondorf would bring, half of the prayers must come from a place so deeply connected to the dead, and perhaps to task a hero with overcoming death itself. For years, fans have speculated on every ambiguous detail of Ocarina of Time's story, creating theories to fill the gaps and answer the game's many mysteries. Could Twilight Princess's Temple of Time actually be Ocarina of Time's Temple of Light? Is the Poe Collector actually the guard found in his place 7 years earlier? Or are Ocarina of Time's sages dead? Ocarina of Time is a story of sacrifice. Bound to the threads of fate, its central characters each go through their own journey, each falling into the role chosen for them by destiny. The most obvious sacrifice is Link's, who forgoes his childhood, his innocence, in order to fulfill the role of the hero. Even after he's sent back through time to relive his lost youth, he finds that although the world itself is the same as it used to be, he has changed, too much to settle back into ordinary life, leaving Hyrule behind and stumbling into his bizarre adventure in Majora's Mask. But the sages also sacrifice their former lives for the good of Hyrule. Every one of them drops everything, their friendships, their responsibilities, their families, to save their kingdom from tyranny. And at the very end of the game, while the freed people of Hyrule dance and celebrate at Lon Lon Ranch, the sages instead have a different, more somber ending to their stories. In the forms of glowing wisps of energy, they travel to Death Mountain's high peak, and look out on the kingdom below. The sages are happy, they smile at each other, and Saria takes a seat on Darunia's head. But there's a clear division here. They're not part of Hyrule's celebrations, nor are they really part of Hyrule anymore. They've transcended into something else, beings above the mortal races, and they're alone. The idea that Ocarina of Time's sages are dead isn't new. It's one of the game's most commonly discussed theories, but it's something I hadn't fully looked into until now. There's a lot of evidence in support of it, but also some strong counter-arguments which we'll run through towards the end. So subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content, and let's look into the fate of Ocarina of Time's sages. The role of sage has a somewhat inconsistent definition throughout the series. Since Ocarina of Time, we've seen sages devoted entirely to praying for the Master Sword's power to repel evil, or ethereal, ghostly sages who carry out the execution of Ganondorf, and before Ocarina, in A Link to the Past, we're told that the 7 maidens are the descendants of a group of sages who sealed Ganon long ago. Regardless of their specific roles, sages are always connected, in some way, to the Sacred Realm, the Triforce, the upkeep of order, and the sealing of evil. And this is of course true in Ocarina of Time, perhaps the sage's most iconic appearance. Ocarina of Time explains that when Hyrule falls into darkness, a voice sounds from the Sacred Realm, calling to those destined to awaken as sages. These individuals, each representing an element, are called to their respective temples, where they begin their new lives as the 6 sages. The 7th sage, however, is instead a member of the Hyrulean royal family. During Ocarina of Time, the 7 sages are Roru, the Sage of Light, an ancient being responsible for the construction of the Temple of Time and the Chamber of Sages long ago, Saria, Sage of Forest and Link's childhood friend, Darunia, Sage of Fire and the Goron Chief, Ruto, Sage of Water and Princess of the Zoras, Impa, Sage of Shadow and one of the only living Sheikah, Naboru, Sage of Spirit and a powerful Gerudo warrior, and Zelda, the 7th Sage, Princess of Hyrule and holder of the Triforce of Wisdom. Over the course of the game's story, we see each sage awaken, save for Roru who was already aware of his role. They transition from regular people, entirely oblivious of their destiny, into otherworldly beings, each fully dedicated to their role and their responsibility. The first modern sage to ascend is Link's childhood friend, Saria. Even before the time jump, Saria is loosely connected to her eventual destiny as the Sage of Forest. She often travels to her secret spot, in the heart of the Sacred Forest Meadow, just in front of the temple, where she claims that if one plays the ocarina, they can hear the spirits of the forest, and that she feels that this place will be very important for the both of them one day. At some point during Link's 7-year slumber, the voice from the Sacred Realm called out to Saria as it did to all future sages. She left the safety of Kokiri Forest, and by the time Link reaches her secret spot, she's nowhere to be seen. After Link frees the Forest Temple from corruption, he meets with Saria in the Chamber of Sages, a bittersweet reunion of 2 childhood friends. However, this isn't the same Saria Link knew. She's more reserved, sad almost, painfully aware that her role as a sage means that she and Link can't live in the same world. It's not explicitly made clear if Saria is dead or not here, but she's obviously changed in some drastic, irreversible way since travelling, alone, to an abandoned mansion infested with monsters deep in the Lost Woods. Darunia, our next sage, is the chief of the Gorons, a race of living rock who dwell deep in the fiery caverns of Death Mountain. During Link's quest for the spiritual stones, he becomes close friends with Darunia, who names him a sworn brother for slaying the monstrous King Dodongo and allowing the Gorons to once again feast on the rocks in Dodongo's cavern. Darunia is passionate and fiercely protective of his people, so it's no surprise that when Ganondorf imprisons the Gorons and threatens to feed them to their ancient adversary, the subterranean lava dragon Volvagia, Darunia takes it upon himself to slay the beast. He admits that he's concerned as he doesn't have the legendary Megaton Hammer, the weapon used long ago to seal Volvagia, but enters its chamber anyway with no other option. By the time Link enters the boss room, Darunia is nowhere to be seen, only Volvagia remains. Of course, the chief reappears in the Chamber of Sages, apparently surprised by his destiny as the Sage of Fire. He doesn't mention his battle with Volvagia, only that he's thankful to Link for helping seal the evil in the temple. So, like with Saria, it's not clear whether or not Darunia is alive here. But unless he was transported to the Chamber of Sages immediately after he entered Volvagia's lair, it's entirely possible that he went through with his plan to take on the lava dragon and died trying to protect his people, now, like Saria, unable to exist in the same world as Link. Ruto has a similar story. Link meets her as a child, where she's become trapped in the stomach of the Zora's patron deity, Lord Jabu Jabu. After he rescues her, she decides to marry him, and gifts him the third spiritual stone as an engagement present. 7 years later, she's found within the water temple, where she explains that she was freed from the frozen Zora's domain by Sheik, and that she's ventured to try and slay the monster found within the temple to save her people. After she moves deeper into the dungeon, we don't see Ruto again until the Chamber of Sages, where she mentions that she wants to offer Link her eternal love, but doesn't think she can now. A similar line to Saria's, indicating a similar fate. We do actually hear from her slightly earlier, just before the boss fight against Morpha, when her voice warns Link to watch out for the water, though it's just her voice, possibly reaching out to Link from the Sacred Realm. Next, Impa, Sage of Shadow. Impa is of course Princess Zelda's attendant, a powerful Sheikah who, long ago, sealed a sinister being only known as Bongo Bongo within Kakariko Village's well. When Ganondorf released the Phantom from its seal, it travelled to the Shadow Temple, and Impa followed, intent on imprisoning the Dark Spirit once more. This plays out similarly to Darunia's attempt to seal Volvagia. We know that Impa travelled to the Shadow Temple to face Bongo Bongo, but by the time Link reaches the dungeon, the Sheikah is nowhere to be seen, and the Phantom Shadow Beast remains unsealed. Impa, once awakened as the Sage of Shadow, notes that she has to stay within the Chamber of Sages, and can no longer watch over Zelda. As opposed to Saria, Ruto and Darunia, it can be argued that Impa was fully aware of her destiny to become the Sage of Shadow, as, like Zelda, she's closely connected to the royal family. Noboru, too, has a mysterious story leading up to her ascension to Sage of Spirit. She enters the Spirit Temple, opposed to Ganondorf's tyrannical rule, but is captured by the witches Kotake and Koume, brainwashed and forced to serve him. For 7 years, Noboru acts as Ganondorf's pawn, stealing and looting, even brainwashing people herself, and is eventually encased in iron knuckle armor and forced to fight Link. After losing in a duel, Noboru regains consciousness, no longer under the control of the witches. The pair decide that, due to her large influence among the Gerudo, they'll brainwash her again, and in a strange moment, they blast Noboru with magic, which appears to disintegrate her. She doesn't appear again until later, where she's inexplicably found in the Chamber of Sages, fully aware of her role. Unlike the other sages, who all mysteriously disappear within their respective temples before reappearing in the Chamber of Sages, we actually see Noboru attacked. But it doesn't seem like Kotake and Koume intend to kill her. Just before they cast their spells, they announce that they intend to keep her brainwashed to serve Ganondorf. So, what's this spell about? Why do the witches seem to vaporize Noboru rather than just forcing her back under their control? If they did kill her, then why talk about how useful she'd be to them if left alive seconds earlier? If she was teleported away into a cell, how does she then appear, unbrainwashed, in the Chamber of Sages moments later? It's a strange moment, one that we'll get back to later. First, we need to cover the final two sages, Roru and Zelda. Roru, the Sage of Light, is clearly not alive in the conventional sense. He's incredibly old, having built the Temple of Time, Temple of Light and Chamber of Sages in an ancient era to protect the Triforce, along with a group of sages long forgotten. Though it's debated among fans, and for good reason, it's confirmed in Hyrule Historia that Kaepora Gaebora, the owl who guides Link on his journey, is Roru taking another form to watch over Hyrule. And we learn from a gossip stone that this owl is known to be the reincarnation of an ancient sage, supporting the idea that Roru is no longer alive, simply a spirit bound to the sacred realm. Conversely, the seventh and final sage, Princess Zelda, is almost certainly alive by the end of Ocarina of Time. Obviously. She's captured by Ganondorf, but is rescued after Link defeats the King of Evil atop his tower in their climactic duel. But she's not really a sage herself. She's the seventh sage, the leader of the group who never sets foot in the Chamber of Sages alongside the others, who are often referred to as a group as the Six Sages. The 7th sage seems to be more of a symbolic role, a leader to connect those in the sacred realm to Hyrule, and to direct the power of the 6. So it would be fitting for the sage who remains in Hyrule to be the only living member of the group. Before the climax of the game, the 6 sages are seen in Ganon's castle, each appearing as Link breaks one of the 6 evil barriers. They each appear floating above Link, like spirits, fading into and out of existence, which could be considered evidence that they're dead, or simply that they're projecting images of themselves using their power as sages. Ocarina of Time's end credits show a celebration at Lon Lon Ranch. The game's characters and races come together to dance to Saria's song, many around a strange multicoloured campfire. But as the music transitions into a more pensive tone, we pan to 2 characters sat at the edge of the field, away from the festivities, King Zora and Mido. These are characters closely connected to 2 of the sages. King Zora is of course Ruto's father, and Mido longed for Saria's friendship, looking up to her despite claiming to be the leader of the Kokiri. Mido especially looks glum, sat cross-legged in silence until he's startled by green sparkles falling from above. He looks up, as does King Zora, and blue sparkles join the green, raining down on the pair. The camera pans and we see their source, bright balls of green and blue light streaking across the night sky, followed by balls of red, yellow and purple, the sages. Though their peoples were saved, Mido and King Zora both lost someone close to them. Even if these sages didn't actually die, they're no longer a part of Hyrule, no longer able to interact with their loved ones. So, do Ocarina of Time's sages die? It certainly seems like it in some cases, and it makes sense on a thematic level too. The sages have to sacrifice everything, their own lives, to save Hyrule. However, I don't think it's the case. While the sages do leave their former lives behind, I don't think they have to die to answer their destiny. The 5 temples are doorways to the sacred realm. It's from these ancient sites that a voice calls forth to awaken the sages. It's not a stretch to believe that, just by being within the temples at the right time, the sages were transported by Roru to the Chamber of Sages to fulfill their purpose, without them having to die. Instead, it's more of a symbolic death. They can't leave this role, they have to defend their temples and continue their duty as sages. The title of Sage has been used for many individuals throughout the Zelda series, including the sages of Earth and Wind in the Wind Waker, individuals who explicitly have to be alive to carry out their duty, with Makar and Medli taking over from their deceased ancestors. A Link Between Worlds sages, while thematically similar to Ocarina of Time's, are definitely not dead. They're various individuals from across Hyrule who were turned into paintings by Yuga, and many sages mention that they want Link to hurry up with his adventure so they can return home to their people, a vastly different sentiment to Ocarina of Time sages, who appear to be trapped in their role. The theory that the sages are dead is the strongest, in my opinion, when regarding Darunia, who we see enter the lair of a violent, powerful dragon with a particular taste for gore on flesh, without the legendary hammer used to defeat it. But it's the weakest regarding Noboru, who is struck by Kotake and Koume's magic, vanishing from sight, presumably teleported somewhere that the pair can come back to later, as it's clear from their dialogue that they don't intend to kill her, they intend to continue using her. As with any Zelda theory, it's up to you, the player, to make up your own mind. These games are often deliberately vague, relying heavily on symbolism and cryptic hints to tell their stories. Personally, while I love the idea that the sages die during Ocarina of Time, I think the story works just as well with them sacrificing their former lives to become beings beyond mortals, a group with the power to seal evil and defend their kingdom at the cost of losing everything and everyone they loved. Ancient statues of the goddess Hylia can be found across Hyrule. one in every major settlement, as well as places of religious significance like the Temple of Time or the Goddess Springs. These statues vary from just a few feet tall to colossal stone titans which dwarf Link, but all of them show their age, with worn edges and the creeping growth of greenery. But just outside the bustling Hateno village, away from the busy sounds of life and civilization, lurks another goddess statue. A statue so pointedly ignored by the people of the village that they refuse to even wipe the bird droppings from it. A statue with a dark past, the Horned statue. A child from Hateno village can show Link to the Horned statue, found a short distance outside of the main settlement down a small path. At first glance it appears to be another goddess statue, nestled closely to the side of the hill with the face and wings of Hylia. But when we look closer we can see twisted horns atop its head, a head which features sunken, sinister eyes. The Horned statue is surprised that Link is able to hear it. Similar to how the goddess statues seem to be able to communicate telepathically with Link, so too can the Horned statue, though in place of the benevolent grace of the goddess Hylia's voice, the Horned statue speaks in cruel, mocking tones. And while divine light from the heavens shines down on the statues of Hylia, eerie light enshrouded in black fog emanates from the ground surrounding the Horned statue. The statue describes itself as once being a dealer in life and power, who traded the souls of mortals for rupees, a merchant of life and money. However, these Faustian deals, swapping life for money, angered the goddess Hylia, leading to the entity being sealed in a stone statue not unlike the goddess statues built in honor of the deity. When Link first finds the statue, without his consent it will steal a heart container from him. Like a reversal of the process through which Sheikah monks bestow spirit orbs, the statue is able to tear part of Link's life essence from him. If Link talks to the statue again, he learns that the being will return the stolen essence in the form of either a heart container or a stamina vessel. After this first swap, the statue will buy containers from Link for 100 rupees, and then sell back the essence in either form for 120 rupees, gaining 20 rupees for itself for every transaction. So aside from being incredibly useful to Link, the Horned statue is interesting because of his backstory, shrouded in mystery. Who was this strange being, a dealer in life and money, whose bargaining resulted in eternal imprisonment in a twisted goddess statue? Is the spirit within truly malevolent or just misunderstood? And have we seen it before in the series? Upon meeting the Horned statue when I first played Breath of the Wild, his malicious, cruel manner of speaking, coupled with his usefulness, immediately reminded me of another character in the series, the Mad Batter. The Mad Batter appears in both A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, found in a single cave in Hyrule in the former and multiple across Koholint in the latter. The Mad Batter is a demon, apparently in the depths of a dark slumber when Link encounters him. Awakening the Batter from this slumber will result in him cursing Link, which in actuality is in all instances a straightforward buff, allowing Link to carry more of various items, such as doubling his magic meter, bomb bag, or quiver. While the Mad Batter's seemingly villainous appearance and tone, coupled with the supposed curses working to Link's advantage, are similar to those traits in Breath of the Wild's Horned statue, I think it'd be a stretch to connect the two. The Mad Batter is, well, mad, contradicting himself and talking in crazed sentences. The Horned statue, on the other hand, perhaps more terrifyingly, appears to be perfectly sane, despite years of imprisonment within the statue. But the Mad Batter isn't the only character we've seen throughout the series who's similar to this sinister statue. This connection between life and wealth is a recurring theme in the series, the most notable example of which is Giovanni. Twilight Princess's Giovanni is one of the most tragic characters in the series. Once a respected man with a home, a cat, and a girlfriend, Giovanni was overcome by greed. His insatiable lust for wealth caused him to sell his soul to a dark creature, providing him with unimaginable riches, mountains of gold, crowns, chests, and jewels. But as is often the case in stories, there was a catch. By selling his soul, Giovanni was turned to gold, unable to move from the throne on which he sat, unable to visit his girlfriend or even remove his petrified cat from his head. When Link visits Giovanni, he'll plead for the hero to rescue him by hunting down the Poes which hold the pieces of his soul. If Link slays all 60 imp Poes, rescuing all fragments of Giovanni's soul, he'll be returned to his regular form, rewarding Link with as much wealth as he likes. But unfortunately for Giovanni, his troubles aren't over. After being freed, he'll move to Telma's bar for the rest of the game, weeping because his girlfriend has left him for another man. While Giovanni's soul is held by 60 imp Poes across Hyrule, he mentions to Link that he sold his soul to a singular dark creature. A dark creature who will buy souls for money. Sounds a lot like the horned statue of Hateno Village. And this is similar to a peril found in Ocarina of Time's Kakariko Village, where an entire family has been cursed in a similar way to Giovanni, known as the Spider's Curse. An old man in Kakariko will tell Link of a fabulously rich family in the village, who were cursed due to their greed. Link can venture into the House of Skulltula, a run-down, decaying house choked by cobwebs, and meet the cursed family, a father and 5 sons who have all been transformed into twisted, chimeric spiders. Similarly to Giovanni's curse, the Spider's Curse can be broken by hunting down the gold Skulltulas across Hyrule, freeing the family and again rewarding Link with unlimited wealth. So it's clear that throughout Hyrule's history, beings who have claimed the souls of greedy individuals have existed. The dark creature which cursed Giovanni, and whoever was responsible for the Spider's Curse in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask might even be the same entity, a twisted, malevolent being which curses those that seek wealth at the cost of their humanity. But despite the seemingly evil nature of the statue, it doesn't seem that it's truly dangerous. If Link visits the Great Deku Tree after completing a number of shrines, but still doesn't have more than the 13 heart containers needed to pull the Master Sword from its pedestal, the Great Deku Tree will say the following. Perhaps you imagine that the containers given to you by the statues of the goddess cannot be changed. Visit Hateno Village in the southeast of Hyrule. There you will find one who trades in such containers, though he is a bit wicked. The Great Deku Tree, sacred guardian deity of the forest, explicitly recommends that Link visits the statue. If whatever was sealed within the statue was truly evil, a being similar to Demise, Ganon, Vati or some other terror, it wouldn't seem fitting for the Great Deku Tree to advise Link to seek his services. Instead, it seems that the Deku Tree knows something that we don't about the statue, laughing that he's a bit wicked, but implying that there's no real threat. Additionally, if Link attempts to trade with the horned statue beyond his limits, going lower than 3 hearts or 1 stamina wheel, the being will reject the trade, warning Link of the adverse effects. Unlike the Spider's Curse, or Giovanni's, it seems that the horned statue is either unable or unwilling to take the base essence of individuals, which would reduce them to a less than human state. So what could it have originally been? Is it a completely unique character, unrelated to anything we've seen before in the series, whose origins we'll never fully understand? Not exactly. I think that in Breath of the Wild, we actually see a character who is incredibly similar to the being within the statue. If we look at the Japanese version of the game, we get slightly more information on the identity of this cryptic character. Instead of a dealer of life and wealth, the horned statue refers to itself as a god on more than one occasion, a god who governed life and power. But perhaps more importantly, we also learn that it's able to perform its magical trading by using the power of rupees. Rupees are the currency of the Zelda series, colourful gemstones ranging from the simple green rupee all the way up to the magnificent gold, worth 300 of the former. In most games they're found all over the world, in long grass, pots or as drops from enemies. Breath of the Wild's rupees, however, are comparatively harder to obtain, though they're still used for buying and selling goods from traders. But rupees aren't just currency. We know that these iconic stones actually contain some form of magical power. For example, the magic armor in Twilight Princess and the Wind Waker directly converts rupees into protection, providing Link invulnerability at the cost of his wallet. But interestingly, we see that the magical powers of rupees are used directly by some of Zelda's most powerful beings, the Great Fairies. Great Fairies are found primarily in fairy fountains, sacred pools which ease the pain of wounded travelers and bestow gifts upon the honest. We've seen them in games ever since the original, but they didn't offer gifts until A Link to the Past, where there's a unique fountain known as the Pool of Happiness. Upon visiting this pool, Link is asked if he would like to throw rupees into the water, and for every 100 he throws in, the Queen of Fairies will appear and increase his maximum carrying capacity of bombs or arrows. In Breath of the Wild, fairy fountains take the form of giant floral pods, which imprison a great fairy within. The fairies will explain that once, these fountains were blooming with life, but over time, fewer and fewer travelers visited the fountains to offer rupees. Without rupees, their powers have waned, trapping them inside these buds. And by donating rupees, Link can restore the power of these great fairies, returning them to their original state. So we know that great fairies, especially those in Breath of the Wild, explicitly use rupees to perform their magic, and without them, they're nearly powerless. But the great fairies, while eccentric, don't seem to fit the personality nor the powers of the horned statue. They are closely connected to life, with fairies themselves being able to revive someone from beyond death, and are powered by rupees, but they don't make trades between the two, instead just upgrading armor. But Breath of the Wild doesn't only feature the 4 main great fairies. There's actually a 5th, one of the most interesting characters in the game, Malania, who appears in his own fairy fountain in the Faron region. Malania, like the great fairies, is trapped within a giant bud when Link discovers his fountain, and requires 1,000 rupees in order to regain his power and free himself. But unlike the great fairies, who simply upgrade Link's armor, Malania offers a unique service. He will revive Link's horses if they happen to die, and is fittingly designed with a giant tribal horse mask. His theme is even the fairy fountain theme mixed with Epona's song, and it seems that the stables across Hyrule were all designed to resemble him. As well as obviously being exceptionally powerful, Malania has a strange personality, often violently threatening Link and then claiming he was joking. Malania is interesting because it proves that great fairies aren't limited to the standard form we normally see them in. This horse fairy is a type of great fairy, found in a fountain, requiring rupees to regain his powers, but is unique in his abilities, appearance, and personality. So, could the being trapped within the horned statue have once been another form of great fairy, similar to Malania? A being who, using the power of rupees, traded life and money with travelers, a service which displeased the goddess Hylia, resulting in eternal imprisonment within a statue. The other unique trait about Malania, when compared to the other great fairies in Hyrule, is how he refers to himself. While the standard fairies refer to themselves as great fairies, with Terra in particular calling herself the Great Earth Fairy, Malania refers to himself as the god who watches over the horses of the world. Even Hylians nearby know of him as a god, with Perosa mentioning that the god who can revive horses lives nearby, and the bridge and lake leading to his fountain are named after this. He's not known as a great fairy, he's known as a god. Just like the horned statue in the Japanese version of Breath of the Wild, who not only uses the power of rupees to perform his magic, but refers to himself as a god. Could the true identity of the horned statue be that of a being similar to Malania, a unique form of great fairy who traded life and wealth with those who visited his fountain? Malania exhibits a strange personality, with fits of rage and an incredibly protective nature regarding the horses he cares for, unlike anything a great fairy has been shown to have before. Might the horned statue, too, have been a fairy with a unique personality. A cruel, mocking entity using the power of rupees to trade wealth and life with travellers, acts which caused the goddess Hylia to seal him within a statue, trapping him for all eternity. It's impossible to truly know the origins and identity of the horned statue. It's one of the most cryptic characters in a game already full of mysteries and puzzles, but that's what makes it all the more interesting. I think that, based on the evidence, it really could have been a being not dissimilar from Melania, a form of great fairy whose trades caused its imprisonment within the statue. But like many things in Zelda, it's up to you to make up your own mind. Sometimes it's not the characters, locations or items themselves that are creepy in games, it's the backstories, the lore behind them. And one of the darkest backstories for any Zelda item has to be the all-night mask from Majora's Mask. So, Majora's Mask is famous for being a really creepy Zelda game. The main masks themselves are quite dark in nature, being physical manifestations of the souls of the deceased, allowing Link to take their form when he wears them. But in my opinion, no mask is more terrifying than the all-night mask. If you prevent Sakon from stealing the old lady's bomb bag on the first night, he can't deliver the stolen goods to the curiosity shop. Instead, on the final night, he'll deliver the all-night mask, which the shopkeeper says is a special bargain. You can buy the mask for 500 rupees. Its use in game is to stay awake during Anju's grandmother's stories, which usually cause Link to drift off, allowing you to answer a couple of questions and nab some heart pieces. So the use of the mask in the game isn't creepy at all, but the lore behind it really is. The shopkeeper at the curiosity shop mentions that he can't remember when it was made, but that if you wear it, you can try to fall asleep, but you won't be able to. When you buy it, the game repeats this, that if you wear it, it won't let you drift off to sleep even if you want to. Alright, so it's getting a bit creepier now. This mask, with unknown origins, prevents the user from sleeping at all, no matter how tired they get. Imagine if you had this mask stuck on your face, unable to remove it and therefore unable to sleep, just becoming progressively more tired and more insane. The scary thing is, that was the mask's original purpose. A gossip stone in the game mentions that a torture device of insomnia is available at the curiosity shop, confirming the origins of the mask that the shopkeeper couldn't recall, or perhaps just didn't want to disclose to Link, a child. There's something about the way he says, you can try to fall asleep but you won't be able to, and how he describes the mask as both freaky and creepy, that suggests he might have known the sinister original purpose of this item, but still wanted to flog it for some profit. This mask was originally used to torture people, forcing victims to wear it and therefore be prevented from falling asleep, tormenting them with insomnia. The mask itself seems to be made from metal bars, like it could be clamped and locked onto a victim's face to torture them over a long period of time. The mask's eyes are wide open and bright red, like the wide bloodshot eyes of a torture victim unable to rest. The all-night mask's actual use in the game aside, its terrifying origins definitely make it one of the darkest things in any Zelda game. But what would happen if you were one of the torture victims subjected to the horrors of the all-night mask? What if you were physically unable to sleep? In the Halloween spirit, let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone wearing one of the creepiest Zelda items of all time, the all-night mask, and see what happens. Sleep deprivation has historically been used as a method of interrogating prisoners, forcing them to stay awake as a form of torture. The Prime Minister of Israel in 1979 mentioned his experience of being kept awake as a prisoner in Russia. In the head of an interrogated prisoner, a haze begins to form. His spirit is wearied to death, his legs are unsteady, and he has one sole desire: to sleep. Anyone who has experienced this desire knows that not even hunger and thirst are comparable with it. In the 16th and 17th centuries, hunting and executing witches was a common practice. When a suspected witch was captured, they were often deprived of sleep for multiple days as a method of forcing them to confess their witchcraft, a practice known as waking the witch. After a few days, the suspected witches often experienced extreme hallucinations and psychotic episodes due to their lack of sleep, and their actions while experiencing these delusions were taken as confessions to their crimes. But the all-night mask wouldn't just keep a victim awake for a few days. It would keep them awake for as long as the mask was kept on, which could be until they die. Although there's very limited experiments on humans in the field of extremely long-term sleep deprivation, a hereditary disease known as fatal familial insomnia is one of the more well-known yet incredibly uncommon causes of a complete inability to sleep. The symptoms begin suddenly where they first experience the insomnia, and as the disease progresses they eventually lose the ability to sleep at all. Patients develop panic attacks, phobias, paranoia, and a complete loss of appetite. And as time goes on, they can begin to hallucinate, experience extreme delirium, muscle spasms, and an onset of dementia, which eventually can result in the complete inability to both walk and talk. Eventually, 6 to 18 months after the first symptoms, the patient will die. This awful disease is luckily an incredibly rare genetic disorder. Its symptoms and lack of ability to sleep are brought on by the death of nerves in an area of the brain known as the thalamus. This damage to the thalamus disables the brain's sleep onset mechanism, meaning it loses the ability to put itself to sleep, which could easily be similar to the symptoms experienced by a prisoner wearing the all-night mask for a prolonged period of time. The all-night mask might do this same thing, just with magic. In Termina, torture victims wearing the mask may have been locked in a cell, slowly going insane as they experience extreme paranoia, hallucinations and panic attacks due to the complete lack of sleep over time. But the true origins of the mask, outside of its uses, are still shrouded in mystery. The shop you buy the mask from, the Curiosity Shop, is of course the shady pawn shop only open at night that buys and sells stolen goods, many of which are brought to the shop by Sakon the thief. Sakon lives in his hideout in Icana Valley, where we know some kind of war took place between the ancient Icana Kingdom and an unnamed enemy. Though all the residents of the Icana Kingdom are dead during the game, it's hinted that there was once a fierce battle between two factions, the Garo being spies sent to examine the defences of the kingdom. We know Captain Kita was in charge of an army, but lost a battle, hence him and his men being found in the Icana graveyard. When this war was and who it was between is unknown, but from talking to characters in Icana Valley, we know it was brutal and resulted in the downfall of the kingdom. Since we know that the all-night mask was used as a torture device, it's possible it could be a long-lost relic, hailing from these dark times, used either by the Icana Kingdom or their enemy to interrogate prisoners during the war. But that's all just speculation. The only thing we know for sure is what the purpose of the mask originally was. The fact that Nintendo decided to put this backstory into the game, to give the mask such a twisted origin story, makes it, in my opinion, one of the most terrifying items in Zelda history. And although it's possible that it was a torture device used during the Icana War, the mask's origins are so shrouded in mystery that we'll never know for sure. But judging from how dark its backstory could potentially be, maybe that's for the best. On the surface, Ocarina of Time's Kakariko village appears to be a quaint, peaceful settlement. Guarded gates shelter the village from the dangers of the open Hyrule Fields to the west and the fires of Death Mountain to the north, ensuring Kakariko remains a calm pocket of quiet civilization and serene beauty. Indeed, the village's chief, Impa, opened up Kakariko Village, once home to the Sheikah tribe, as a refuge for those fleeing the civil war that took place before Ocarina of Time, an event which is echoed after the game's time skip, where even more Hyruleans flock to the village once Castletown falls. From the gentle spinning of Kakariko's iconic windmill to the lazy, soothing theme music, Ocarina of Time makes a point of painting this place as one of comfort and safety. Yet, Kakariko Village is built on a lie. Deep below the ground, right beneath the feet of unknowing villagers, lurks a labyrinthian torture chamber, the Shadow Temple, and by extension the bottom of the well is where lies Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred. Stone tunnels wind downwards into the earth, ancient halls filled with cages, guillotines, and, of course, the undead. But of all the terrors found beneath Kakariko, one stands out above the rest. During Child Link's exploration into the tunnels beneath the well, he finds himself locked in a small, square chamber with walls and floor formed from packed earth. Only it's not earth, it's corpses. Hundreds of corpses. Worse still, out of this sea of rotted bodies rise multiple long, slender arms, slowly writhing in the dark. And if Link gets too close, an arm will grab him, pinning him in place as it rises from the ground. Dead Hand, an impossible, sickening, yet unsettlingly human entity, shuffles slowly towards the trapped hero, its pallid flesh stained in streaks of blood, its jaw hanging as if unhinged. If he fails to escape the arm's grasp in time, these jaws will close around Link in a vicious bite as the creature attempts to consume him. Understandably, Dead Hand has become one of the Zelda series' most memorable enemies, not just for the sheer horror of it, but also the mystery. Despite its apparent importance, the beast below the well is never explained. So let's examine everything we know about Dead Hand, and attempt to understand what it is. The first and most important thing to note about Dead Hand is that it isn't a unique monster. Link fights two of them throughout his adventure, first as a child in the bottom of the well, and second as an adult in the Shadow Temple. As I mentioned, these two places are functionally two halves of the same dungeon. Both are bloody, nightmarish places linked to the Sheikah tribe found below Kakariko village, but it seems less likely that Link is fighting the same monster twice instead of just fighting two of them. Both Dead Hands appear in identical rooms, with the walls, floor and ceiling formed from what appears to be human remains. The texture differs between the original and the 3DS remake. The original appears to be made exclusively out of skulls, but the idea remains the same. Dead Hands appear from among the remains of the deceased. And of course, there are few places in any iteration of Hyrule more closely connected to the dead than the chambers below Kakariko village. Sheik refers to this place as the House of the Dead, and according to Hyrule Encyclopedia, the Shadow Temple was originally used by the Sheikah to interrogate the enemies of the royal family. There's also the much less reliable source of the Great Hyrule Encyclopedia, originally hosted on Zelda.com. This page included a ton of information on Ocarina of Time, though it was often full of errors and contradictions. Regardless, its entry on the Shadow Temple is still worth mentioning here. Lying behind the Kakariko graveyard, the Shadow Temple was built with the blood and bones of Hyrule's evil dead. The Shadow Temple is a tangle of illusions and puzzles, each designed to add another resident to its already overflowing crypts. This dark purpose is never explicitly stated in-game, however. All we know is that it was built or used by the Sheikah tribe, evidenced by its proximity to their hometown and the emblem of their tribe on its door, that it was in some way connected to the Hyrulean royal family, evidenced by the use of Zelda's lullaby throughout, and that whatever happened here was really, really dark. The history of the bottom of the well and the Shadow Temple aren't made clear through dialogue or story beats, but by the blood-stained stone floors, torture crosses, scythes, spikes, chains, cages, and masses of bones. The walls of Dead Hand's chambers, the same texture used on some other walls throughout the Shadow Temple, gives the impression that this place is, in a literal fashion, made out of the dead. Thousands of corpses packed into the surrounding earth. With this in mind, the tight, enclosed spaces where Link encounters the Dead Hands could be charnel pits or mass graves, where the corpses of those unfortunate enough to meet their end in these dungeons were stored. Like the Shadow Temple and Bottom of the Well themselves, Dead Hand is left unexplained in Ocarina of Time. Much of its horror and its lasting impact on players comes from their own imagination. We're left wondering exactly what we encountered in these depths. The horrors of Dead Hand aren't just limited to its location or its design though, there's the fight itself. At the start of the encounter, Dead Hand lurks beneath the ground, with only its hands writhing above the surface. This means, to fight it, Link must allow himself to be grabbed. The player must lose control, to become trapped as the creature slithers towards them. This isn't strictly true. The second Dead Hand can be fought using the Lens of Truth and bombs, but it is of the first encounter. To force it to emerge from the ground, Link needs to be grabbed by one of its hands. In many ways, this highlights how Dead Hand is the perfect embodiment of the themes of the dungeons below Kakariko. Places which force the hero to face his fears, to delve into the darkness and emerge victorious. To defeat Dead Hand, Link must fall into its trap. With the context of where Dead Hands are found, certain aspects of its design begin to make more sense. The hands with which it reaches up to snare prey all share the same pale and emaciated, corpse-like appearance of their master. At first, it isn't apparent whether the hands and the monster are the same entity, or whether what we're seeing here is the reanimated hands of the dead and a monster which has developed a symbiotic relationship with them, feeding on the prey they ensnare. After all, similar corpse-like hands can be seen reaching out of the pools at the very bottom of the well, and no monster appears alongside them. However, Navi implies that the hands and the monster are one and the same, warning Link to watch out for its infinite hands. Monsters with many arms aren't exactly uncommon in the Zelda series. However, what makes Dead Hand as interesting as it is terrifying is the fact that its face is eerily human. Its jaw is oversized, its neck stretched, but Dead Hand's nose, brow, and sunken eye pits closely resemble a human skull, to the point where the implication seems to be that it was once human. One possible answer for this nightmarish creature could be that it is something of an amalgamation of multiple corpses, a kind of Frankenstein's monster, or Rat King, that was formed out of the countless bodies in which it is found, a being that wishes only to consume more, to add to its horrific mass. This would explain why it has infinite hands reaching up from the masses of skulls, as it would mean that Dead Hand is not a single organism, but the result of so many bodies in such a small place, tucked into the corners of some of the most haunted places in the Zelda series. In fact, this zombie-like theme is echoed in its name in the German translation of the game, which translates to brain sucker, and would explain its blood-stained, corpse-like flesh. Another possibility is that Dead Hand is something akin to a Preta, or hungry ghost, a spirit popular in Eastern stories. Pretas are often depicted as having long, thin necks and bulging stomachs, which represent their central trait, an eternal, insatiable hunger. They are usually the unfortunate reincarnations of greedy people, whose karma now inflicts them with a hunger they cannot escape. In the case of Dead Hand, its hunger seems to be for flesh, whether that's the heaps of corpses it lives amongst, or the unsuspecting adventurers it attempts to eat. These chambers would not represent the mass graves of the Shadow Temple's victims, but the hoarding grounds of a starving spirit. Of all places in Hyrule, the Shadow Temple, where lies Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred, would befit these sad entities. Perhaps the Dead Hands represent these souls, greedy, hateful beings, who now suffer in purgatory as repentance for their sins. In truth, there's no reason that both of these possibilities can't be true. The Zelda games often draw from Japanese culture and mythology for the design of their places, characters, and enemies, while adding their own elements to these established ideas. Dead Hand might be inspired by the hungry ghosts of Buddhism, or be some twisted blend of the tortured dead, or both. Like many things in the Zelda series, the ambiguity is the point. The only thing we know for certain is the sheer horror it evokes, and the courage it takes to fight. A perfect example of the themes of the Shadow Temple. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a like, and subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.